Chapter 147. Impressive. One phone call was all it took. Looking at his posture, that person should be a bodyguard. How impressive a bodyguard could be depended on his master. Yi Rong looked at Jiang Xiu and returned to her seat. She asked, "Didn't you say you were from Jiang City? Are you actually a rich young master? Why did you bring a bodyguard with you?" Jiang Xiu said, "I don't know that person. A bunch of arrogant wretches." Yi Rong looked doubtful. "Then why did he help you?" Jiang Xiu laughed coldly. "To show off his strength." Yi Rong, of course, didn't believe him completely. She felt that that person was probably here to prevent people from causing trouble. First, he warned Jiang Xiu, then sent the group of people away. "You're too impulsive. There are many people like that in the nightclub. Just ignore him. Why did you have to fight with him?" Jiang Xiu said, "I'm not good at anything else, but I'm good at fighting." Yi Rong rolled her eyes at him and started to hesitate. Jiang Xiu was indeed quite domineering just now. When he slapped that man, her heart skipped a beat. Not only was she shocked, but she was also taken aback by his handsomeness. It was a pity that her family was poor. Yi Rong thought to herself. She had paid attention to Jiang Xiu's clothes. Of course, there were also rich young masters who deliberately kept a low profile, but the clothes were worn on the body. If the quality was too poor, it would be very uncomfortable. They couldn't stand it, so they would wear clothes made of good fabric. On the surface, they didn't look branded, but in reality, they were all handmade and were more expensive. However, Jiang Xiu's clothes were of average quality. If you can fight, then fight. You're so barbaric. Who will be your girlfriend in the future? Who will worry for you? With your fiery temper, I'll have to come to the police station every day for a month to get you." Jiang Xiu's eyes flashed with sadness. In order to torture Cheng Lingran, he often fought and caused trouble, and was arrested and sent to the police station. The insurance fee and compensation fee added up to more than 1,000 yuan each time. Cheng Lingran couldn't afford it, so she gritted her teeth and scraped together money, but she never complained about him. She was using all her gentleness to soothe Jiang Xiu's wounded heart. Looking at Jiang Xiu drinking with his head lowered, Yi Rong shook her head. This person had another shortcoming. He was too boring and did not know how to tease girls. Being with him must be very boring. She stood up and said, "I'm going to dance. Want to join me?" "No." The music in the ballroom was so loud that no one could hear what was going on outside. The commotion just now did not even attract the attention of Zheng Luan and Lu Lily. Seeing Yi Rong return alone, Lu Lily asked, "How was it?" Yi Rong shook her head and began to sway her body to the music. After a while, when she looked in the direction of the seat again, Jiang Xiu was no longer there. Walking out of the nightclub, the road outside was silent. She reached out and hailed a car. "Go to the Civil Affairs Bureau of Chaohai District." Under the night sky, the capital was brightly lit. The cars along the road flashed with mesmerizing neon lights. Here he felt even more pain. Only in the silent Civil Affairs Bureau of Chaohai District did he receive the first comfort of his life. Jiang Xiu said that Cheng Lingran was hypocritical, so Cheng Lingran brought him here. Sitting in front of the Civil Affairs Bureau of Chaohai District, the scenes from his previous life seemed to have happened yesterday. Now that he thought about it, she must have known about Cheng Hanlin's actions. At that time, Jiang Xiu and Cheng Lingsu were only 5 years old, but Cheng Lingran was already 7 years old. A 7-year-old child already understood many things. Later, Jiang Yi's strange car accident, and Lin Yueling's death for love. Cheng Lingran knew that it was the Cheng family that destroyed Jiang Xiu's family. Therefore, she wanted to give him a family and bury her life with Jiang Xiu's. In this life, the grudge between her and the Cheng family was over. "You don't have to be tortured by me anymore." In fact, Jiang Xiu felt that Cheng Lingran didn't have to do that in his previous life. Cheng Hanlin, Sun Xiaohong, and Cheng Lingsu's debts were not borne by them. They were free and happy, so why should she suffer for them? However, by the time Jiang Xiu figured it out, he couldn't leave Cheng Lingran. Therefore, he selfishly continued his usual style of tormenting others. He even tortured himself to keep Cheng Lingran by his side. "What do you want in this life?" "This sovereign, I will grant you a picturesque world." A black car slowly drove over. Jiang Xiu looked up. After the car stopped, a person got out of the car. It was Secretary Yi again. You're in a good mood, sitting alone on the street. He walked towards Jiang Xiao. Are you very conflicted, very painful, and very difficult to choose? Jiang Xiao laughed. Do you think I'm wavering on whether to return to the Jiang family? Isn't that the case? Secretary Yi said. Many people want to be the grandson of Jiang Xiao. Many people want to be the young master of the imperial capital, able to scare the crap out of people with just one sentence and be awe-inspiring. He sat down beside Jiang Xiao. Jiang Xiao said, do you think that being Jiang Yishan's secretary is also awe-inspiring? Secretary Ye's expression was a little awkward. If he said that he didn't, then all his preparations would be in vain. If he said that he did, then what kind of person would he be? He didn't care about his face anymore. It's all right. Jiang Xiao's expression turned cold. If I return to the Jiang family, the first thing I'll do is ask the old man to throw you out. Get lost. The next time you appear in front of me, I'll break your legs. Secretary Ye's face turned pale. He didn't expect Jiang Xiao to change his attitude faster than flipping a book. You, as Jiang Yishan's secretary, even the feudal officials had to be polite to him. He was actually humiliated by a brat who was still wet behind the ears. Jiang Xiao, don't regret it. Secretary Ye's face became a little more hostile. Do you think that Jiang Yi is so great now that he's a county secretary? Let me tell you, those who go against the old man won't have a good ending. No one can go against the old man, and as a descendant of the Jiang family, no one can go against him. After saying that, he fiercely swung his hand and left in a rage. Humph. Jiang Xiao knew what kind of role he would play when he returned to the Jiang family. From the beginning to the end, he had only seen Jiang Yishan once. During festivals, his descendants would line up to congratulate him, but he didn't even have the right to do so. He was rejected at the door and was ridiculed by his cousins. His only role was to arrange the marriage with Nangong Ko, or so that the Nangong family could unite around the Jiang family. If Jiang Xiao guessed correctly, Secretary Yi came to pester him this time, because the Jiang family needed him to arrange the marriage with Nangong Ko. It was a bit of a coincidence. At that time, Jiang Yi had already left home. Logically speaking, even if he arranged the marriage, it would be to a relatively poor family. At that time, the Nangong family was indeed like this. However, things were unpredictable. The Nangong family had been unusually successful in the past 20 years. Several of their descendants had performed very well in their official careers, and even the Jiang family had to try their best to win them over. This highlighted the importance of the marriage between Jiang Xiao and Nangong Ko. Therefore, the Jiang family really needed Jiang Xiao as a chess piece. Coincidentally, in this life he met Nangong Ko in advance. She almost had an accident while driving a Ferrari. Later, she introduced him to Qin Weiping and implicated the Wang family. She also said that he would call her when he came to the capital. Jiang Xiao had a good impression of this young girl. However, the Jiang family wanted him to be with Nangong Ko, so he naturally wouldn't provoke Nangong Ko again. He didn't want the Nangong family to misunderstand and benefit Jiang Yishan. His phone rang. He took it out and saw that it was Zheng Luan calling. Hey brother, where did you go? Jiang Xiao said. I came out to get some fresh air. Zheng Luan said. Yi Rong said that you provoked someone just now. I thought you had an accident. It's good that you're fine. Yi Rong is hard to get, but it's okay. Don't be discouraged. There are plenty of fish in the sea. Zheng Luan felt that it was a pity. Originally, he thought that Jiang Xiao would have a companion when he went out in the future. But now, it seemed that it was difficult to form a small group. Where are you? We have to go back now. The dormitory closes after 10 o'clock. Jiang Xiao said. I'm quite far away. You can go back first. I'll check my car and go back by myself. Okay. After hanging up, Jiang Xiao looked at his phone. Cheng Lingran still hadn't called him. According to the time, Cheng Lingran should have returned to the dormitory. Otherwise, once the dormitory closed, she would have to sleep on the street. According to her personality, she definitely wouldn't let such a thing happen. Jiang Xiao hesitated for a moment. In the end, he resisted the urge to call Cheng Lingran. Chapter 148. The next day the archaeology course started. Compared to other courses, the archaeology course was much more open. Of course, the amount of knowledge required was also much greater. In fact, archaeology was the excavation of relics from the past. However, Jiang Xiu did not seem to be obsessed in this area. He was not even interested in it. He wanted to find miracles. Qiu Yinru was also in the class. There were 2 girls with her. They were listening to the teacher attentively. In fact, Qiu Yinru was personally involved in this project. She even knew more details than the lecturer. Little Qiu, come up and tell the students about the origin of this porcelain. The teacher told Qiu Yinru to go up. At some point, she had begun to play the role of an assistant teacher. She was wearing a white short-sleeved shirt, and her waist was tight, which accentuated her slender waist. She was born with a figure comparable to a model. She was more than 1.7 meters tall, and she wore a pair of pink sneakers, which accentuated her slender legs. When she walked quickly onto the stage, she was brimming with youthfulness. Her black hair fluttered gently, which set off her pretty face and made it even more sparkling and translucent. Her temperament was cold, and no one dared to have any blasphemous thoughts. She stood on the podium and began to lecture. She was beautiful and had a pleasant voice. Just looking at her on the podium was very pleasing to the eye. Her gaze inadvertently swept over Jiang Xiu. She found that the latter had his head down and was looking at the information. He had no intention of listening to her lecture at all. She remembered that Jiang Xiu had accidentally kissed her in the elevator. Her cheeks heated up, and she became even angrier. Jiang Xiu, what are you doing? Are you listening to my lecture? Jiang Xiu said, no. He did not even raise his head and continued to look at the information. He did not give her any face at all. Qiu Yinru frowned. Since you are not listening to my lecture, why are you sitting here? She walked towards Jiang Xiu and looked at Jiang Xiu fiercely. Jiang Xiu acted as if he did not know she was coming and continued to look at the information. When had the beauty Qiu been ignored like this? She said, what are you looking at? Jiang Xiu said, it's none of your business. What you're talking about is not part of my homework. It's my freedom to listen or not. I won't disturb your class, and you shouldn't disturb my reading. He didn't give him any face at all. Qiu Yinru was getting angrier and angrier. No one had ever been so rude to her. She wanted to scold him, but she couldn't find a reason to be angry. She glanced at his information and saw the ancient city of Sahagan. She frowned and said, I've made it very clear that you have no share in the ancient desert city this time. Why are you still studying this? Jiang Xiu said, that's not necessarily true. You're just a student. What right do you have to decide who goes and who doesn't? Qiu Yinru asked, what do you mean? Jiang Xiu raised his head and glanced at her. He smiled contemptuously and continued to read, ignoring her. Qiu Yinru's eyes widened. Don't tell me you want to go by yourself? Jiang Xiu said, why not? The ancient city of Sahagan didn't belong to her family. If they could go, others could go too. Qiu Yinru bit her red lips. He was clearly arguing with her. Of course not. This is a national heritage. It must be approved by the relevant departments. You can't go by yourself. If you mess around and destroy the cultural relics, what will you do? You're breaking the law, you know? Jiang Xiu said, haha. But she didn't respond to him at all. All the students in the classroom were looking at her. Qiu Yinru couldn't get angry even if she wanted to. She stomped her foot angrily and returned to the podium to continue teaching. After class, Qiu Yinru angrily wanted to find Jiang Xiu to settle the score. Professor Su walked over. Little Qiu, the school has objections to the name list of the expedition team going to the ancient desert city. This had always been decided by the department. She just had to report it. Professor Su said, the school wants to add one more person? When Qiu Yinru heard this, her first reaction was to resist. The project was decided by the department, and she was the one who got the sponsorship. Why should the school want her family? She said, no, the members have already been decided. Professor Su pushed up his glasses and said helplessly, if you don't add them, the school won't approve it. Qiu Yinru bit her red lips. She seemed to have a habit of biting her lips when she was angry. She didn't know that it was very sexy. The eyes of the boys beside her were straight. The more shy ones blushed. Why is the school so barbaric? Who are they adding? It can't be another playful rich young master, right? They had brought them before. It was very troublesome and made their archaeological work very difficult. Those rich young masters were just greedy for the novelty of archaeology. They treated it as an adventure trip. Professor Su said, "It's not a rich young master this time. It's a new student from our department, Jiang Xiu." What? Qiu Yinru's eyes widened. The school insisted on adding Jiang Xiu. She felt a surge of anger rise in her heart, almost bursting out of her chest. She turned around and chased after Jiang Xiu. "Stop right there." Jiang Xiu was surprisingly obedient this time. He really did stop. When the students saw this, they all looked at him sympathetically. "How dare you go against our teaching assistant in class? Brother, I'm sorry for your loss." The group of animals left Jiang Xiu without any sense of brotherhood. They even said, "We'll go to the cafeteria to grab a seat first." Qiu Yinru said angrily, "Why did the school add you to the exploration team?" Jiang Xiu said, "I told you, you're just a student. You can't decide who goes and who doesn't." Qiu Yinru said, "This is our department's decision. You're destroying the unity." Jiang Xiu said, "So what?" Qiu Yinru had never seen someone as arrogant as Jiang Xiu. She said angrily, "Tell me, what despicable means did you use to deceive the school?" Jiang Xiu said with a smile, "I just gave the school 500,000 yuan. Originally, Jiang Xiu asked Wang Xintong to organize an exploration team. Wang Xintong came up with this plan after hearing it. The problem was easily solved by this genius girl." Qiu Yinru pointed at Jiang Xiu with indignation. "Jiang Xiu, you're the most despicable person I've ever seen." "The most despicable?" Jiang Xiu grabbed her finger, his eyes cold. "This project was funded by the eldest son of the Jin family of the Jin group. I heard that the eldest son of the Jin family is pursuing you. He knows that you want to do this investigation, so he funded this project. Don't make yourself sound so great. You just rely on your beauty. What's the difference between you and me?" Qiu Yinru's arm hurt from his grip. She struggled to break free with tears in her eyes. "You," Jiang Xiu said. "I heard that the eldest son of the Jin family will go with us. Does he know archaeology? Or is he interested in archaeology?" "No, he just wants to go out with you." With that, Jiang Xiu ignored Qiu Yinru and turned to leave. "You bastard." After a long while, Qiu Yinru cursed. She stubbornly didn't let her tears fall. She felt wronged. She felt that she wasn't what Jiang Xiu said, but she couldn't refute his words. Jiang Xiu didn't go to the cafeteria to eat. Instead, he went to the Zhongtian group in the capital. This was a new company founded by Wang Xintong more than a month ago. Since Jiang Xiu came to the capital, she naturally had to follow him. "Mr. Jiang, the person you mentioned is here." Through the surveillance camera, Jiang Xiu could see a young woman gracefully walking over. She was wearing a dark gray suit and looked dignified and elegant. She was dazzling in the mist. The staff here were all beautiful women, but this young woman's presence made everyone else pale in comparison. Jiang Xiu's eyes flashed with bitterness. "Don't let her know that I arranged it. Don't let her know the salary is too high. Make the work easier." This woman was none other than Chengling Ran. Today's suit was especially solemn and formal. It was completely different from her usual gentle and charming style. It was obvious that she was very nervous. She even took several deep breaths before entering the room. Seeing her like this, Jiang Xiu couldn't help but smile. Wang Xintong had been paying attention to the changes in Jiang Xiu's expression. As a woman, she could tell that this woman was special to Jiang Xiu. She had never seen Jiang Xiu care so much about someone. Of course, Wang Xintong knew about the feud between Jiang Xiu and the Cheng family. She also knew that Jiang Xiu had a fiancé named Cheng Lingsu, and this woman was called Cheng Lingran. She was Cheng Lingsu's older sister. Wang Xintong felt that she had spied on a shocking secret of this man who controlled his fate. She knew that she shouldn't ask, but she didn't know if she was possessed. She asked, "Do you like her?" A trace of panic flashed through Jiang Xiu's eyes. He suddenly reached out and grabbed Wang Xintong's neck, wanting to strangle her to death. Chapter 149. Wang Xintong's neck was choked by Jiang Xiu, and she almost couldn't breathe. At this moment, she felt that she would be strangled to death. Jiang Xiu's cold voice rang in her ears. If you dare to speak nonsense again, be careful that I will kill you. However, Wang Xintong boldly looked into his eyes. Her lips curled into a smile as she said, "Could it be that I was right?" Jiang Xiu's reaction was as if someone had discovered a shocking secret and wanted to kill her to silence her. She was almost certain that she had guessed correctly. It really shocked her. Jiang Xiu actually liked his fiancée's sister. "Do you really think that I don't dare to kill you?" Jiang Xiu revealed his ferocious look. His eyes turned dark and he increased the strength of his hand, as if he really wanted to strangle her to death. Wang Xintong's face twisted in pain. She pounded Jiang Xiu's steel-like arms and struggled desperately. When she was almost suffocating, Jiang Xiu slowly let go of her hand. Cough, cough, cough. She coughed with difficulty a few times before she slowly recovered. She looked at Jiang Xiu with a complicated expression, and a trace of disappointment flashed in her eyes. She had heard that the more indifferent a person was, the more affectionate he was. The more indifferent he was on the outside, the more intense the love in his heart. Jiang Xiu's feelings under his indifferent appearance should be for this girl. "Don't worry, I won't tell anyone." At that moment, when Jiang Xiu was choking her, she didn't feel that Jiang Xiu was scary. Instead, she felt that he was very pitiful. He loved someone, but he didn't dare to let others know. His first reaction was to kill her to silence her. Jiang Xiu said, "There's no such thing. Are you trying to ruin my reputation?" He would never admit to this. "Go out and get me a cup of coffee," Wang Xintong said. "Okay." After she finished speaking, she slightly adjusted her collar in front of the mirror. There were a few conspicuous marks on her snow-white neck. She stretched out her slender fingers and gently stroked them. There was still a slight sting. In her heart, she thought that he was really nervous just now. He reached out to take a silk scarf and wrapped it around his neck. It looked like it was carefully designed. It didn't look like it was to hide the marks on his neck at all. She went out for a while and came back with coffee. After putting the coffee on Jiang Xiu's table, she sat on the sofa and stared at the monitor on the screen. A top student from Capital University. Such a talent doesn't have to worry about not being able to find a job. Jiang Xiu said, "I know. It's just that the outside world is too complicated. Especially since she's too beautiful. It's easy for her to get into trouble." Wang Xintong laughed. "Mr. Jiang knows a lot about men's psychology." Jiang Xiu said, "Are you saying that I'm a pervert?" Wang Xintong said, "Aren't you?" After that night, Wang Xintong had been in contact with Jiang Xiu for more than 2 months. In addition to some intimate actions, such as dancing for him occasionally, she also dared to say some things. Otherwise, if it was when she first met Jiang Xiu, she wouldn't have dared to say those words even if she was beaten to death. Jiang Xiu said, "Of course not." Wang Xintong's eyes revealed a trace of coquettishness and a trace of bitterness. Her cheeks were also slightly red. Jiang Xiu asked, "My sister, how did she answer the interview?" At this moment, Cheng Lingran finished her interview. She stood up and bowed respectfully to the interviewers to express her gratitude. She appeared to be very polite and well-mannered. Wang Xintong said, "Her answer was very good. She didn't say that because of you. She has a clear mind, quick reactions, and knows how to grasp the key points. In addition to her appearance, as long as she works in the company for 1 or 2 years, it won't be a problem for her to become a gold-collar worker with an annual salary of millions. She is indeed Cheng Hanlin's daughter." Jiang Xiu's heart was slightly touched. In his previous life, Cheng Lingran often changed jobs for him. Almost none of them lasted long. Most of the time, she was used to deal with him and buried her own talents. After Cheng Lingran left the interview room, she stood outside the door and let out a long sigh. It seemed that she was very nervous. Then she took out her phone. The first person she called was Cheng Lingsu, then her parents, and finally Jiang Xiu. Wang Xintong glanced at Jiang Xiu. The order in which she called after an important event showed the importance of each person in her heart. Obviously, Jiang Xiu was at the bottom. Jiang Xiu was naturally aware of this as well. Therefore, he looked a little disappointed. The phone was picked up. "Sister, how was the interview?" Cheng Lingran said, super nervous. I felt that the interviewer was very professional and asked very difficult questions. I felt that I didn't answer very well and might not pass. Jiang Xiu said with a smile. Of course it won't be a problem. You are a top student of Capital University. If they don't want you, it will be their loss. Cheng Lingran said. I'm still worried. Where are you? I'll treat you to a meal. I'm still in the interview room. I'm just nearby. Let's meet at the subway entrance. From afar, he saw Cheng Lingran holding a parasol, standing in the shade of the subway entrance. Her ice-cold eyes revealed a faint smile as she watched Jiang Xiu trot over. She reached out and pulled Jiang Xiu. Her hands were a little cold, probably because of the internal elixir. It's so hot. Why are you running? Be careful not to sweat. Walking side by side with Cheng Lingran, Jiang Xiu's height originally had an advantage, but today Cheng Lingran was wearing more than 10 centimeters high heels. Her height was originally about 1.7 meters, but after wearing these shoes, she became 1.8 meters. Jiang Xiu said, "The next time I see you, I have to wear underwear and be taller. This hurts my self-esteem." Cheng Lingran couldn't help but laugh and tease him. "You used to be a little girl, but now you are as tall as me. My self-esteem is hurt. Today's situation is special. I have an interview, so I have to wear more formal clothes. I don't usually wear high heels." Jiang Xiu laughed and said, "Your legs are really long." Cheng Lingran's legs were long to begin with, and now that she was wearing high heels, they were even longer. Hearing this, the girl's pretty face heated up. She rolled her eyes at him coquettishly and said softly, "You're taking advantage of your sister again. I'll make you poor later." Walking along the street, Jiang Xiu was familiar with the place and entered a small restaurant. In his previous life, Jiang Xiu and Cheng Lingran often came to this restaurant. Not only was the food authentic, but the price was also very cheap. It was a place where the two of them shared beautiful memories. At this moment, Jiang Xiu felt as if he had returned to his previous life. He was in high spirits. Cheng Lingran sat down and said in surprise, "Minor repairs. Why do I feel like you are so familiar with this place? Have you been here before?" Jiang Xiu shook his head and said, "No, I heard it from a classmate." Cheng Lingran's face was full of suspicion. She didn't believe that a classmate would be able to find a restaurant so easily if he was so familiar with it. However, she also knew that Jiang Xiu had never been to the imperial capital before. Moreover, these small things weren't enough for her to think about in detail. She also didn't think that Jiang Xiu was a second life. Almost all of the dishes they ordered were Cheng Lingran's favorites. Her eyes flashed with tenderness as she looked at Jiang Xiu and said, "We can eat together like when we were young again." But just as she finished sighing with emotion, she said worriedly, "I just don't know how my interview went." Jiang Xiu said, "There should be a letter soon." As he spoke, he sent a text message to Wang Xintong. Originally, it was supposed to be tomorrow, but he asked Wang Xintong to inform the HR department in advance. Not long after, Cheng Lingran's phone rang. "Yes, it's me. I'll be working tomorrow." "Really, thank you, thank you." She hung up the phone and was so excited that she jumped up. "Yay, minor repairs. I've been hired." Jiang Xiu felt like a great demon king who had everything under control. "I told you you could do it." Cheng Lingran was as happy as a little girl. "My monthly salary will be 18,000 yuan from now on, and that's not including the bonus. Then you really have to treat me." Cheng Lingran said with a smile, "You want to take advantage of this opportunity to extort me? Dream on. I still haven't received my salary yet. I'll treat you to a meal when I get it." Jiang Xiu said, "Okay." Cheng Lingran counted with her fingers and said, "When I get my salary, I'll give 10,000 yuan to mom and dad, 6,000 yuan to Su Su as pocket money, and keep 2,000 yuan for myself." Jiang Xiu could understand giving the bulk of her salary to mom and dad. Why would he give Cheng Lingsu 6,000 yuan a month, and only have 2,000 yuan left for himself. Su doesn't have to give so much. Cheng Lingran sighed and said, I feel that Su has changed. She's become taciturn. Her family's affairs should be a big blow to her. She used to be very good at spending money. I want her expenses to return to the level before her family went bankrupt. This might make her happier. Sometimes, Jiang Xiu really didn't want Cheng Lingran to be so considerate of others. Chapter 150. They ate dinner for a long time. They hadn't had a chance to be alone like this for a long time. Even if they didn't talk, it was very comfortable to sit together. Both of them seemed a little reluctant to end the dinner, but night fell eventually. Jiang Xiu had to get up and pay the bill. Jiang Xiu and Cheng Lingran strolled along the streets of the imperial capital. Jiang Xiu used the fact that Cheng Lingran's body was cool as an excuse to stick close to her. Cheng Lingran, on the other hand, was on guard against this little pervert. She saw him put on an act and pointed to the sky, saying, The moon is so bright tonight. Cheng Lingran couldn't help but laugh. Yes, so bad, so unskilled. Jiang Xiu gently bumped into Cheng Lingran and took the opportunity to hold her hand. However, he only touched her lightly and didn't hold her hand. Cheng Lingran's heart was like a mirror. She turned around and looked at him with a smile. You're still young. These words gave Jiang Xiu a reason. He reached out and held Cheng Lingran's small hand in his. Jiang Xiu's palm was very warm. Cheng Lingran's pretty face was slightly hot. Jiang Xiu said, Yes, I'm still young. Cheng Lingran didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Don't you know shame? You're an adult, but you're still acting cute. Jiang Xiu said, Why are we still treating each other like strangers? Cheng Lingran said, You're much more thick-skinned than before. But she allowed him to hold her hand. She reminded him, You have to take care of yourself in the desert. Don't try to be brave. If there's danger, we won't get involved. Do you remember? Her tone was like when she was a child. Jiang Xiu said, Yes. He still remembered that when he was in the East Continent, Cheng Lingran would come to him with gifts. Every time she left, she would tell him many things. Jiang Xiu sometimes felt a little impatient. Little did he know that one day, Cheng Lingran suddenly stopped coming. Jiang Xiu had always felt that there was a reason. It couldn't have happened so suddenly. According to Cheng Lingran's personality, even if she was busy with her studies, she would still greet him. Under the dim light of the night, her pretty face was even more charming and moving under the neon lights of the street. Noticing Jiang Xiu's hot gaze, she said, What's wrong? Is there something on my face? Or have I changed? Am I not as beautiful as before? The two of them hadn't been so close to each other for many years. Jiang Xiu smiled brightly. Even if you're a dung beetle, you're still the most beautiful dung beetle in my eyes. Cheng Lingran was so angry that she punched him hard on the shoulder. You're the dung beetle. You're the dung beetle through and through. You still look like you've just finished work. Don't run. Cheng Lingran saw Jiang Xiu chasing after her, but she couldn't run fast in high heels. She hurriedly hid in a corner and screamed. Don't catch me, don't catch me. In the past, when she came to the East Continent to find Jiang Xiu, the two of them would go to the mountains to play. Every time she was caught by Jiang Xiu, she would scratch him. This was Cheng Lingran's Achilles heel. Jiang Xiu had been her husband for a lifetime, so he knew where her weakness was. However, they were not in the mountains. On the road, Jiang Xiu said, Sister, can we not scream? Before Jiang Xiu could do anything, Cheng Lingran was already laughing. I'll scream, Jiang Xiu said. If you scream again, the police will come. I'm not familiar with the capital. If the police catch me as a hooligan, I'll feel wronged. Cheng Lingran laughed even harder. You deserve it. You're a hooligan with a dung shell. Jiang Xiu had no choice but to make a move. He directly scratched her lower ribs. A black car was driving by the side of the road. Wang Xintong was sitting in the car, looking at Jiang Xiu and Cheng Lingran. Her beautiful eyes showed astonishment and disappointment. She was puzzled by her behavior. Why did she follow them? She knew it was not for that strange Cheng Lingran. Cheng Lingran felt a little pain in her belly from laughing. You broke the rules just now. According to the previous rules, I won't protect you in the future. Jiang Xiu said, You protect me? Who's the most disloyal one? Chung Lingran answered first. You, it's all you. Whenever you're in danger, I'm the one who's willing to sacrifice myself for you. In the future, if you're bullied in school, just say my name. Jiang Xiu said. Is it useful to say your name? Chung Lingran said seriously. Get rid of that. It has to be useful. If there's anyone who doesn't like it, I'll kill them with a knife or a fire. She suddenly stopped halfway and shrank back. Jiang Xiu was still puzzled. Why did she suddenly stop? He looked up and saw a wild dog standing in front of them, sticking out its tongue. Its eyes were quite scary under the dim street lights. Then, Jiang Xiu felt that someone had completely hidden behind him. Not only was she tugging at his clothes, but her delicate body was also trembling. Jiang Xiu reminded her in a friendly manner. It's your chance to show off. It was fine if Chung Lingran refused to come out, but she even put Jiang Xiu in front of her. What the hell was the meaning of this? Jiang Xiu said. You're not loyal, Chung Lingran said. This time unless. Ooh. Will it bite us? Jiang Xiu said. If it sees thin legs it will bite. Chung Lingran was so scared that she stomped her feet. Her legs were thin. She couldn't believe it. If she was bitten by this wild dog, how miserable would that be? Then, she became even more disloyal. She simply treated Jiang Xiu as a human cushion. Sis, can you bear to see me get bitten? Chung Lingran said. Now that things have come to this, I can only grit my teeth and bear it. Ah! A wild dog that was looking at her suddenly moved. Whoosh! Chung Lingran was so scared that she jumped onto Jiang Xiu's back. Run, minor repairs. Well, now Jiang Xiu was like a mantis shrimp. That wild dog ran away instead. That was close. Walking into the subway, Jiang Xiu stared at Chung Lingran until she couldn't raise her head. However, the eldest daughter of the Chung family lowered her head not because of shame, but because she was trying hard to hold back her laughter. You have no loyalty. Jiang Xiu scolded her harshly. The eldest daughter of the Chung family finally couldn't hold back her laughter. Then, she quickly lowered her head again and repented. When they arrived at the university town, the two got off the train. Chung Lingran waved goodbye to Jiang Xiu. Chung Lingran pointed at the phone in her hand and said with a serious face, If you get bullied, remember to tell me my name. After saying that, she couldn't hold back her laughter and ran away. Jiang Xiu's face turned green with anger. When he returned to the dormitory, the animals were not there. University life was a life of complete freedom. He could play to his heart's content. Especially in the first year, he was like a bird that had just been released from the birdcage. When he entered, a boy from the dormitory next door came over and said, Jiang Xiu, Professor Su is looking for you. Jiang Xiu said, What did he say? The classmate said, It should be about the ancient desert city. He wants you to go to the teaching building. It was still early. Some of the students were still studying at night. Jiang Xiu left the dormitory building and walked towards the teaching building. There was a Ferrari parked in front of the teaching building. This car was a luxury car no matter where it was. Before he walked in, he heard the noise inside. There were many people inside. Jiang Xiu said, Professor Su, you're looking for me? Professor Su saw Jiang Xiu and said to a handsome boy next to him, He's Jiang Xiu. Jiang Xiu, this is Jin Shi from the Jinjin group. Jin Shi looked Jiang Xiu up and down and said, You're Jiang Xiu. You're not on the list we made. You don't have to go this time. Wait for next time. There will be a chance. Qiu Yinru was beside him. She raised her chin slightly and looked at Jiang Xiu provocatively. Jiang Xiu said, Do you have the final say? Jin Shi's face darkened and said, I funded this project. Do you have the final say or not? Jiang Xiu said, I only know that my name is on the list. If I don't go, the school will not approve this expedition. At most, no one will go. As soon as he said this, the professors and experts present became anxious. This was an opportunity they had dreamed of. Jin Shi said with a cold face, Our expedition team doesn't bring trash. What can you do if you go? Divide gold and deal with bandits? It's better to bring a camel than you. Student, you should know your place. Jiang Xiu said, I can't do anything. The only thing I can do is that if I can't go, you can't go either. Xiao Inru was furious. This guy was really arrogant and annoying. Professor Su said, "Why don't we let Jiang Xiao go? One more person won't make a difference. We can't cancel the plan that we've prepared for so long just because we don't let him go alone." The old instructor was afraid that the plan would fail. "Jin," she said. "Okay, since Professor Su said so, of course there's no problem." He walked over and whispered in Jiang Xiao's ear, "Kid, you're courting death. You'll suffer on the expedition." There were 2 bodyguards behind him. They looked like they came from the military. "I'll wait," Professor Su said. "Then we'll prepare everything and set off tomorrow." Chapter 151. The next day, the expedition team gathered at the school gate. Jiang Xiao had offended Jin Shi and Xiao Inru and insisted on following them. The team members didn't want to see him. As a result, Jiang Xiao was isolated. He didn't care at all. He didn't want to interact with these people anyway. He got on the school bus first and sat at the back. The rest of the people were moving their luggage and equipment. Professor Su was the team leader this time. The vice leader was the expert Qian Deshen. The 2 stood together and talked about something. Of course, there were students helping them carry their luggage. Professor Su said, "This time, we're going to take the train to Qinghai Province, then take the bus to Xining City, and then enter the western regions." Qian Deshen said, "The master we invited hasn't arrived yet. Are we going directly?" Professor Su said, "You mean Li Chengji? Master Li knows feng shui and yin and yang, so he won't be restricted like us. He's already in Qinghai. When we get there, he'll appear and meet us." "Professor Su, everything's ready. Okay, let's get on the bus." Someone sat next to Jiang Xiao. It was a senior. He didn't greet Jiang Xiao, so Jiang Xiao ignored him. They were going to the train station now. With so many people, they couldn't afford to take a plane. Moreover, the school wouldn't let the expedition team be so extravagant. Even if they had more money, the school would save it to buy equipment. "Jiang Xiao, you should be thankful that you're allowed to follow us. Why are you sitting in the bus doing nothing?" The person who spoke was a junior called Shen Duan. Jiang Xiao said, "Are you the one who gave me this trip?" "You." Another student saw Shen Duan deflated and said, "Duan, some people think they have some stinky money, so they bribe the school and put on airs here. They don't know that Xiao Liang is just a clown." "As if we don't have money." Another student said with righteous indignation, "That's right. In terms of wealth, who has more than Master Jean?" Just now, Master Jean was helping someone carry their luggage. He had indeed taken Xiao Inru's luggage. "Why are you wasting your breath on him? Once we're on the surface, don't even think about getting food or drinks from us. Let's see how he'll survive in the desert." In the distance, Jin Shi chuckled. There was no need for him to do anything. These people who wanted to curry favor with him would naturally do it. "All right, let's not talk too much. When we are outside, the most important thing is to be united." Of course, Professor Su was aware of this problem. The expedition team had never encountered such a situation before. He was a scholar and was not very good at dealing with this kind of problem. "If Jiang Xiao doesn't want to take it, then you guys can share it more," Shen Duan said. "I'm not willing. Whoever wants to help can help." "I don't want to either." Jiang Xiao chuckled and ignored this group of people. He didn't need anything at all except for food. As for food, he planned to buy it at the edge of the western region. The things there were more suitable for the desert, and he didn't want to buy it here and bring it in. Xiao Inru glanced at Jiang Xiao and couldn't help but shake her head. Her first impression of Jiang Xiao was that he was actually quite a good person. It was mainly because of Jiang Xiao's appearance that he had an advantage. However, after interacting with him, she found that this person was too arrogant and wild. Moreover, his methods were very evil and somewhat unorthodox. When they arrived at the train station, the group was busy again before they finally loaded all the luggage onto the train. Jinshi was on the phone. He had always been a person who made plans before taking action. Before taking action, he would definitely investigate Jiang Xiao's background. Should he directly destroy him, or deal with him in a roundabout way? On the other end of the phone said, Jiang Xiao, 17 years old, from Jiangzhou, Jiangqing City. He studied in primary school and junior high school in Dongzhou. He transferred to Jiangqing Second High School in high school, and is the top scorer of the college entrance examination in Jiangnan Province. Family background. Father, Jiang Yi, is currently a county secretary in Annan County. Now it has been promoted to a county-level city. Mother, Lin Yueling, is a housewife. Jinshi listened indifferently. So he was just the son of a county secretary. In his remote village, he could act like a tyrant. However, in the capital, any official on the street was more powerful than his father. He was just like an ant. How dare he act so presumptuously in front of me? Then, Jiang Xiu looked over and saw Qiu Yinru handing Jiang Xiu a bag that wasn't very heavy. Jiang Xiu didn't take it. Qiu Yinru said, "Take a lighter bag and pretend to be nice. You don't want everyone to isolate you on the way, do you?" Ha ha ha. Would Jiang Xiu care about them? Seeing Jiang Xiu ignoring her good intentions and getting into the car, Qiu Yinru was furious. "What's with your attitude? When we enter the desert and there's no food or water, you'll be begging for help. Let's see who will help you then." Jinxi's face darkened. Of course, he didn't think that Jiang Xiu really wanted to go to the ancient desert city for archaeology. This was just an excuse for Jiang Xiu. His real target was Qiu Yinru. Qiu Yinru seemed to treat this kid differently. "How dare a piece of trash like you compete with me?" Jinxi had to admit that this kid's methods were better than his. Qiu Yinru actually took the initiative to talk to him. It took him a year and a half to do this, but this kid only took a day and a half. After Jiang Xiu got into the car, he found a seat and sat down. Most of the car was occupied by the expedition team. Seeing that no one wanted to sit with Jiang Xiu, Professor Su sat next to Jiang Xiu and said with a smile, "Little Qiu told me about your situation. She didn't mean any harm by not letting you go. This trip to the desert is very dangerous. Most people wouldn't be able to take it without experiencing a few difficult expeditions. Little Qiu was just thinking about you." Jiang Xiu smiled faintly. Professor Su said, "It's all in the past. You're also going with the team. Let's just forget about it." Haha. Little Qiu is cold on the outside but warm on the inside. Jiang Xiu naturally wouldn't take such a small matter to heart. Professor Su said, "By the way, why didn't you bring any luggage? This trip will take us a month or even longer." Jiang Xiu said, "I'll buy it when we get there." Professor Su said, "You're quite carefree. By the way, why do you insist on going this time?" Jiang Xiu said, "It's because of the hidden miracles in the ancient city." Miracles? Professor Su pondered for a moment and then asked, "Student Jiang Xiu, do you really think there are miracles in this world?" Jiang Xiu said, "Yes." Professor Su said, "There are some unexplainable scientific phenomena in this world, but to say that there are gods..." He shook his head to express his doubts. "That's not very likely." Student Jiang Xiu, why are you so sure? Jiang Xiu really wanted to tell him that he was a god. However, the old professor wouldn't believe him even if he said that. He said, "Humans went extinct twice, and each time, there were traces of the gods. Under the ancient desert city, there are many statues of the gods." Professor Su was shocked when he heard this. "How do you know that there are many statues of the Protoss buried under the ancient city of Sahagan?" Regarding this point, it was only the speculation of the experts. As for whether it was true or not, it was the focus of their investigation this time. Jiang Xiu came to a conclusion now. Jiang Xiu said, "My friend said so. The longevity stone talisman came from there. Moreover, Xie Sanqian's home had some portraits of the ancient city. These portraits were drawn by his ancestors after they returned to the Ming dynasty. Although they weren't very accurate, the general outline shouldn't be wrong." Professor Su asked, "Does he have any evidence?" Jiang Xiu said, "Aren't we going now? When we get there, all the mysteries will be solved." Professor Su sighed and said, "It's not that easy to find. The so-called ancient city only exists in documents. No one has actually entered it. Even if someone saw it in the desert, it was from afar. It's hard to tell if it's real or fake. Our trip this time is not so much a search for secrets, but a pathfinding." Jiang Xiu said, "Didn't they say that 3 years ago someone found it?" Professor Su said, None of the people from 3 years ago came back. Finding it was only an official statement. No one knows the truth. As he spoke, he took out a 2-centimeter thick book. This is all the information we can currently collect about the ancient city, as well as the various routes in the desert. Right, have you been to the desert before? Jiang Xiu nodded but said, I'm different from you guys. I don't have any experience that can help you. The immortal Martial continent also had deserts. The climate there was 1,000,000 times worse than the desert on Earth. A sandstorm could tear a divine body apart. Professor Su said. What do you mean? Jiang Xiu shook his head and didn't say anything. Professor Su said, we'll go to Pinghai first. We need to pick up a very important person. Chapter 152. Jiang Xiu asked casually, important person? What kind of important person? Professor Su said, because the ancient city we are exploring this time is an underground tomb. This means that we are going to enter a tomb this time. Entering a tomb is different from archaeology. We have to find someone who knows the ropes. Therefore, this time, we invited a great master who knows feng shui and yin and yang. Exploring tombs was a very important part of archaeology, but it was only a part. In addition to tombs, archaeology had many other aspects such as relics, historical sites, and secret places. In fact, archaeologists rarely went to tombs. Most of them were tomb robbers, and there were many strange things in tombs. There must be a master who knew feng shui and yin and yang in the tomb robber gang. Jiang Xiu said, Great master? What's his name? Professor Su said, Li Qingji from the Pinghai spiritual tomb sect. According to young Master Jin, this person has a very high status in Pinghai. It cost a lot to invite him. Jiang Xiu nodded slightly. After all, they were going into the desert. The desert was hot and torturous, and the desert was too dangerous. Most people were not willing to take this risk. It seems that they did spend a lot of money. He looked at Jin Shi, who was sitting opposite Qiu Yinru and talking with a smile. This young master was really willing to spend a lot of money to get Qiu Yinru. By the way, what's the background of this young Master Jin? Professor Su was surprised. You don't know? Jiang Xiu shook his head. Professor Su couldn't help but shake his head. He dared to offend the other party without even knowing his background. Pinghai Jinjin Group is a famous tycoon in Pinghai. The Jin family's assets are enough to rank in the top 5 in Pinghai province. It's one of the top in the whole Hua nation. When Professor Su said this, he showed a sincere expression of surprise. Pinghai was like Jiangnan. Its economy was developing rapidly. Later, Jiangnan would catch up with Pinghai and leave it far behind. However, Pinghai province's economy was still above Jiangnan, ranking in the top 3. It was indeed amazing to rank in the top 5 in Pinghai province. However, Jiang Xiu only smiled faintly. There were many truly wealthy families in Hua nation, and their assets were far superior to these so-called Forbes billionaires. It was just that their assets were hidden, and they did not want to be high-profile. Seeing that Jiang Xiu did not seem to care, Professor Su purposely reminded him, I've also heard that the Jin family is not as simple as it seems on the surface. Although the Jin family is in Pinghai, they have deep connections in the capital. This can be seen from the fact that the first young master of the Jin family is able to mingle around in the capital. He lowered his voice and said, The Jin family is a political and financial magnate. They are the moneybags of the Jiang family. Jiang Xiu frowned and asked, Are you talking about Jiang Yishan? Professor Su nodded thoughtfully. Jiang Yishan had stayed in Pinghai before. If it was said that the Jin family and Jiang family were related, it would be reasonable. Professor Su said, Now you know the origin of this first young master of the Jin family. He is really not someone that ordinary people can afford to offend. Later, find some time and apologize to him properly. Do you understand? Jiang Xiu smiled and did not comment. Professor Su said, Young man, it is good to have pride, but you must know how to judge the situation. There are some people that you cannot offend. Not only will you ruin your own future, but you will also bring disaster to your family. At the table far away, several people took out poker cards and played with great interest. The long-distance train was very tiring. If they did not find something to do, it would be difficult to pass the time. Jiang Xiu leaned against the seat and closed his eyes. Then he did not open them again. He did not eat, drink, or go to the bathroom for more than 10 hours. They had arrived in Pinghai. The group prepared to get off the train. Shen Duan said, "First young master of the Jin family, are you from Pinghai?" "Jin," she said. "Yes, but I grew up in the capital. My hometown is here. During the holidays, I will come back to live for a period of time. I am very familiar with the place. We will stay in Pinghai for a day or two. When the time comes, I will take you around Pinghai." "Inru, is this your first time in Pinghai?" Qiu Inru nodded slightly. "Yes, this is my first time here. I wanted to come several times before, but unfortunately, I didn't manage to. This time I finally came." Everyone took down big and small bags again. Archaeology was indeed difficult. These people were too good at carrying things. Camera equipment, exploration equipment, stairs, tents, sleeping bags, and so on. "I will help you." Jin Shi once again showed his gentlemanly demeanor. "Thank you." Everyone's heart was like a mirror. This kind of opportunity was naturally given to first young master of the Jin family. In fact, he was not the only one who had a crush on Qiu Inru, but the others had to give way. When they left the train station, there was already a bus waiting outside. Pinghai was first young master Jin's territory. Naturally, everything was arranged properly. The hotel they booked was a private 5-star hotel. Normally, it would not be so luxurious. However, the hotel was called Jin Jin Luxury Hotel. It was their own hotel, so they stayed for free. Wow, I have never stayed in a 5-star hotel before. What extravagant hopes. Looking at the luxurious 5-star lobby, the girls shouted excitedly. It was too cool. "Jiang Xiu, have you stayed here before?" Shen Duan asked softly in Jiang Xiu's ear. No. Jiang Xiu cooperated and said the answer they were hoping for. In 2008, the economy was still average. A 5-star hotel was completely different from a 5-star hotel in the future. It was truly luxurious and high-end. For many people, staying in a 5-star hotel was really quite luxurious. Shen Duan said, "So people have to know how to be grateful, okay? If it weren't for first young Master Jin, how could we have the chance to stay in such a high-end hotel?" But Jiang Xiu didn't wait for him to finish speaking. He took the room card and left. "Look, what kind of person is that?" "That's right. Letting people like him stay here for nothing. He's really an ingrate." Little did they know that he did not really want to invite them to stay. He was just pretending. If it weren't for Qiu Inru, would Jin Shi even care about people like you? Would he even invite you to stay in a high-end hotel? Not long after Jiang Xiu returned to the hotel, a long-awaited call came in. It was from Gu Dikang. "Hello, is this Mr. Jiang?" Jiang Xiu said. "What's the matter?" Gu Dikang said uneasily. "Originally, I didn't want to disturb Mr. Jiang, but there's no other way. Due to the poor performance of the Jingmen military region in the military competition, some of the leaders in the military region were dissatisfied. I'm facing a lot of pressure. Now that the situation has escalated, I heard that some people want me to step down." Jiang Xiu said. "Someone is adding fuel to the fire?" Gu Dikang said. "Whether it's the military or the official career, it's all the same. Once you're in a weak position, there are too many people who want you to step down. So I wanted to ask Mr. Jiang for help." Jiang Xiu asked, "How do you want me to help you?" Gu Dikang said. "This time, the leaders who performed poorly were held accountable. It's just an excuse, but sometimes the excuse is the key. So, I can only win it back in the military region. I want to ask Mr. Jiang to come to the military region and teach those little brats a lesson. Show the results to the headquarters as soon as possible." So it was because of this. Jiang Xiu held the title of Jingmen Military Region's chief consultant, but he hadn't gone over for 2 months. Gu Dikang was rushing him. Jiang Xiu said, "I want to enter the desert. If I'm fast, it'll take 10 days to half a month. If I'm slow, it'll take a month. If you're under too much pressure, how about this? I have a fist technique here. You can get someone to take it and pass it to your army. It should be able to increase the combat power of the soldiers by a level." Gu Dikang asked. May I ask Mr. Jiang, what is the name of this fist technique and what level is it? Jiang Xiu said, bursting flame fist, demigod level. Ancient fist techniques could increase one's strength by 10 times. It was already very impressive. This was a level higher than ancient fist techniques. Didn't that mean that it could increase the combat power of the soldiers by 10 times? I'm rich. Gu Dikang was overjoyed when he heard this. Thank you, Mr. Jiang. Thank you, Mr. Jiang. Jiang Xiu didn't have any ordinary fist techniques, nor did he have any ancient fist techniques. He only had divine fist level techniques. However, all of his fist techniques were immortal martial arts. These warriors didn't know any techniques, so they couldn't learn immortal martial arts. Jiang Xiu removed the part of immortal martial arts, leaving only pure martial arts. Therefore, he called this bursting flame fist demigod level. There was already an ancient fist technique in the army. Now that there was a demigod level fist technique, it was really amazing. I'll send someone to get it. Chapter 153. After hanging up the phone, Jiang Xiu asked for a notebook from the hotel staff and wrote down the cultivation method of the explosive flame fist. He tried to simplify it as much as possible so that the soldiers in the military wouldn't be able to comprehend and practice it. Immortal was the core of the two words immortal. If it was removed, the essence would be gone. If the word martial was left, there wouldn't be much power left. However, even if there wasn't much power left, it would still be far superior to ancient martial arts. After simplification, the word flame was basically gone. Originally, when the explosive flame fist was used, there would be flames everywhere. Moreover, the flames were real and contained a terrifying explosive power. Now it could only be transformed into an explosion of qi. It was no longer appropriate to call it explosive flame fist. It was more appropriate to call it explosive fist. After writing it down, Jiang Xiu was tired from a day's train ride. He took a shower and went to bed. At this time, a military jeep was rushing to the Jinjin Marriott Hotel. The driver was Gu Dikang's personal bodyguard captain, Yin Zhen. Today's matter was very serious and could affect the fate of the entire Jingmen military region. Before leaving the military region, the chief repeatedly told him to be polite to Mr. Jiang. Yin Zhen wanted to cry in his heart. That man was like a demon god. Who would dare to be disrespectful to him? Were they tired of living? However, looking at the chief's expression, the trip to Bodhi Biogenetics must have left a shadow in his heart. That was simply an explosion in his inner world. He was completely abused to the point of doubting his life. After that day, Jiang Xiu was like a god in their hearts. There were only a dozen demigods on the demigod ranking in Huaxia. If the news that Mr. Jiang had killed Li Puti with a talisman spread, it would certainly shock the entire martial arts world of Huaxia, and even attract the attention of the whole world. Another peerless expert in Huaxia had appeared. Thinking of this, Yin Zhen's heart was filled with a natural sense of honor. He felt proud that Huaxia had a person like Jiang Luoxia. With this kind of pride and excitement, the jeep couldn't help but drive faster and faster. The Jingmen military region was stationed in Jingmen province between Jiangnan province and Pinghai province. It wasn't very far, but it was definitely not close either. There was no such thing as a short distance between two provinces in Huaxia. When he arrived at the hotel, it was already 2 in the morning. He decided to stay in the hotel for the night and look for Jiang Xiu tomorrow. Yin Zhen. Suddenly, a person called his name. Yin Zhen turned around and saw a handsome young man walking towards him with a face full of surprise. He said in astonishment, "Master Jin, why are you here?" "Jin," she said, "this hotel belongs to my family. I'm the one asking you, why are you here? Aren't you in the military?" Yin Zhen naturally couldn't tell him that he was here to carry out an SSS-level mission. "I came here to play. It's a rare day off, so I came here to play. What are you doing?" Behind Jean were several men who seemed to have something to do. "Jean," she said, "it's nothing serious. I just met a blind person who made things difficult for me. I was just about to teach him a lesson." "Have you checked in? I'll have someone arrange a good room for you." Yin Zhen said, "That's good." After the arrangements were made, Jinshi led his men upstairs to Jiang Xiu's room and rang the doorbell. One of them said, "Open the door, the police are checking the room." Jiang Xiu was sleeping soundly. After being woken up, he didn't think much about it. It was common for the police to check the room when staying in a hotel. Plus, with his cultivation, he wasn't afraid at all. But as soon as he opened the door, a group of people rushed in. They were all muscular, and it was obvious that they were all martial artists. Their eyes were fiercer than the other, and their gestures were as if they were going to smash the room. How were they police? They were clearly a group of bandits. Jinshi had a playful smile on his face and closed the door behind him. "Jiang Xiu, I told you you'll regret coming with us to explore." Jiang Xiu looked at this group of people with a faint smile. Jinshi said, "You're very calm. Of course, you're the son of a city book after all. Plus, you even challenged the entire martial arts department in high school." Jiang Xiu frowned slightly. "You investigated me?" Jinshi said, "Not really. Before I make a move, I usually understand my opponent. Today I'll give you a free lesson. This is called knowing yourself, and knowing your enemy is the key to winning 100 battles." Unfortunately, our Master Jin only investigated Jiang Xiu. He didn't know that Jiang Xiu had another name, Jiang Luoxia. He smiled proudly. "These people aren't that good at fighting. This one was the provincial boxing champion. This one was the national champion. And this one was the underground boxing champion for 18 consecutive years. Today, I specially invited you here. You're worthy of respect. Today, I'll beat you until you kneel and call me grandpa." Jinshi said with the attitude of a victor. "Ah Biao, go and practice with him." He raised his chin slightly. At this time, he was completely different from his usual polite appearance. It was as if he was a different person. "How dare you go against Master Jin? You must be tired of living." The man named Ah Biao was more than 1.8 meters tall. The muscles on his shoulders were 2 or 3 times larger than that of an ordinary person. He rushed up and wanted to press Jiang Xiu down. Bang! Jiang Xiu raised his leg and kicked the man away. After his huge body flew out, he directly hit the door behind him. Jinshi felt Ah Biao pass in front of him with a strong gust of wind. Then with a bang he flew out of the room together with the door. Damn it! Jinshi's face froze in an instant. He couldn't believe his eyes. This was a super security door. It weighed 400 pounds and was so strong that it couldn't even be broken by a car. When the other people saw the situation, they were scared out of their wits. This could be an internal force master. No, he was a transcendent master. They turned around and tried to escape, but how could they be in a hurry? Jiang Xiu grabbed their clothes. With a swoosh, the 200 strong men were thrown out like trash. They crashed into the wall at the far end, causing the wall to cave in. The roof was scattered with mud and dust. Whoosh whoosh, then he threw out the other 2 people in the room. Only Jinshi was left. The latter's face was extremely ugly. He knew that Jiang Xiu was good at fighting, but he didn't expect his martial arts cultivation to be so high. "You're a martial arts master?" Jiang Xiu said with interest. "Do you want me to break your left leg, or your right leg, or crush your head?" Jinshi thought to himself, "I almost died today. However, I'm very lucky." Coincidentally, a top-notch martial Dao Grand Master came to the hotel. He turned around and rushed out shouting, "Brother Yan, save me." Yanzhen was a guard. His consciousness was always on guard against sudden danger. Just now, when Jinshi said that he wanted to teach someone a lesson, he paid attention to avoid accidents. And such a big movement might be nothing to others, but it was big enough for him. He rushed out of the room and rushed to the scene of the incident. Seeing Jiang Xiu walk out slowly and not in a hurry to attack him, Jinshi heard footsteps. He turned his head and looked at the end of the corridor. Yan Zhen's figure had appeared. With a proud smile on his face, he provoked Jiang Xiu. Come if you have the guts." "Don't you know whose territory this is?" Jinshi said. "Brother Yan, someone wants to hurt me. Who dares to hurt young Master Jin in Pinghai?" Along with the voice, Yan Zhen rushed over like a tiger out of the cage. He was very powerful and seemed to be ready to suppress everything at any time. However, when his gaze landed on Jiang Xiu, he felt as if he had been struck by lightning. It was that demonic godlike man. When he thought of Jiang Xiu's ruthlessness and heaven-defying strength, his face instantly froze. It's him, Brother Yan. Destroy him. But Yanjun didn't move for a long time. He turned his head and saw Yanjun's pale face and trembling. Jiang Xiu said, "You came to find me?" Yanjun came back to his senses and nodded with difficulty. Yes. Because it was too late, I didn't dare to disturb Mr. Jiang, so I stayed in the hotel for the time being. I didn't know she dared to offend Mr. Jiang. Mr. Jiang? She said, "Brother Yan, you know him. Why are you so afraid of him?" He is Mr. Jiang. Which Mr. Jiang? He had a bad feeling in his heart. Yanjun was not an ordinary person. He was the personal bodyguard of the military chief. He was a person who had seen the world. How could an ordinary person scare him? Yanjun said, "Mr. Jiang from Jiangnan." Jinxi's eyes suddenly widened. He looked at Jiang Xiu in disbelief. Chapter 154. Mr. Jiang from Jiangnan. This time Jinxi was really scared. He broke out in a cold sweat. He knew what kind of person Mr. Jiang from Jiangnan was. Mr. Jiang's reputation was built by rolling heads. How could you be Mr. Jiang? Jinxi's voice became weak. He began to tremble at the end, and he didn't dare to look Jiang Xiu in the eye. He didn't take Jiang Xiu seriously. His father was just a county secretary, and in the eyes of the Jin family, he was like an ant. However, Mr. Jiang was a real low-level hero. It was said that the underground of Jiangnan trembled under his murderous power. He was someone who was on the same level as Gu Deji on the Jiangnan frontier and Ma Yingqiu, the tycoon of Jiangnan. How could they be compared to him? He claimed to be a young master, but many young masters had fallen on the road to becoming heroes. Even if he, Jinxi, grew up for another 20 years, he still needed the right time, place, and people to reach Mr. Jiang's current position. In other words, Mr. Jiang's current position was what he wanted. Jiang Xiu looked at him indifferently. "Since you know who I am, then you should know what happens to people who offend me." Jinxi's face completely changed. He heard that the head of the Wang family, Wang Xuehai, was pushed off a helicopter by this person and fell to his death. "Mr. Jiang, I'm a member of the Jin family. For the sake of the Jin family, please spare my life. My Jin family is backed by the Jiang family in the capital. Spare my life." Jiang Xiu said. "Spare your life? Ask Yanjun if anyone who has offended me is still alive." Cold sweat slid down Yanjun's face. His face was extremely pale. No, he had never seen Jiang Xiu's ruthlessness and decisiveness. Even the chief sighed and said that he had never seen Jiang Xiu's cultivation in his life. Similarly, he had never seen such an ambitious and ruthless person. Jinxi said, "I'm a direct descendant of the Jin family. If Mr. Jiang touches me today, he'll become enemies with the Jin family. One more friend means one more path." Jiang Xiu said, "So you understand this principle? I thought you didn't. Since you understand, why don't you let me join the expedition team? The school has already agreed. Why do you still insist on kicking me out? Since you know, why did you bring a group of people here and beat me up until I call you Grandpa?" Jinxi's forehead was covered in cold sweat. "You don't seem to like making friends either. Who makes friends like you? If I was really an ordinary person, what would happen to me? My arm would be broken? Broken leg?" Jinxi was at a loss for words. If Jiang Xiu was not Mr. Jiang, of course he could do whatever he wanted. So, Jiang Xiu waved his hand and a force of qi came out. Crack! Jinxi's two calves were broken by his fist. He fell to the ground on the spot and let out an extremely painful and miserable scream. My leg, my leg!" He only dared to scream twice and stopped. He was in so much pain that he almost fainted. He had no strength to scream again, and could only make a whimpering sound. "Throw him out." "Yes, Mr. Jiang." After Jinxi was thrown out of the hotel, someone sent him to the hospital. His two broken legs needed immediate surgery. In the past, if his legs were broken like this, even if he found the best bone surgeon, he would still be lame. If he didn't take good care of his legs would be deformed. But now science was advanced. After the surgery, he could walk normally and even have a chance to recover. But this experience was enough to make Jin Shi unforgettable for the rest of his life. Then the boxing champions who had fainted were also thrown out. After doing this, Yanjun returned to Jiang Xiu's room. The door was broken, but it didn't prevent Jiang Xiu from resting. Yanjun knocked on the door gently. "Mr. Jiang." "Come in." Jiang Xiu was sitting on the sofa. There was a glass of spring water in front of the table. He picked up the notebook on the coffee table and handed it over. "Explosive fist, demigod level. The fist can't be easily pierced. Only 100 people are allowed in the army." Jiang Xiu didn't want his boxing to become a street job. No matter how powerful a martial art was, once too many people learned it, it would slowly become useless. If it was too easy to get, it wouldn't be cherished. Yanjun reached out his hand excitedly. He believed that he was definitely one of the 100 candidates. He was currently cultivating the ancient fist technique. Now that he could upgrade it to the demigod fist technique, his strength would increase by several times. One had to know that at his level, it was extremely difficult to increase his strength by even a little, let alone increase it by several times. He asked, "Mr. Jiang, may I ask if this fist can make one a demigod?" Since it was called a demigod's fist, it should be used to understand the mysteries of demigods. Jiang Xiu pondered for a moment and shook his head. No. A demigod had to be extraordinary. The immortal part of this set of boxing had been completely removed by him. When cultivated to the peak, one could reach the limit of a mortal body. Unless the cultivator had comprehended it himself, there was no way to transcend this category. "The path of a demigod is not as simple as you think," Yanjun said. "I'm thinking too much." There were only a dozen people on the demigod list in the entire China. It wasn't that easy to become a demigod, let alone pass on the army commander's boxing. Yanjun said, "I've got the boxing. Then I'll immediately set off and return to the military to avoid any more trouble." The next day, everyone woke up and played on their own. Young Master Jean didn't appear until noon. In addition, when they called, the other party was offline. At around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Professor Su gathered everyone. The people they were waiting for had arrived. Li Chengji of the Spirit Tomb sect and his 2 sons. Li Chengji wore a black robe with one hand behind his back, holding a bead. He looked like a hawk and wolf, especially his eyes, which were very frightening. He was a natural-born eccentric. His whole person was very imposing. He might be in his 60s or 70s, but he looked like a middle-aged man. He didn't even look older than his 2 sons. "Students, this is Master Li." The students shouted in unison, "Master Li." Li Qingji smiled and said, "Hello everyone. By the way, where's young Master Jean?" He came to give face to young Master Jean, but he hadn't seen him yet. Professor Su said, "I'm also puzzled. I couldn't find young Master Jean when I woke up today. Maybe something happened." Li Qingji frowned and said, "Today is the day of departure. After today, the next few days will be inauspicious. Let's go first. As for young Master Jean, we'll contact him later." Feng Shui people were very particular about this. It was not a big problem to wait for young Master Jean when they reached the periphery of the desert. Besides, no one present was willing to take Jin Shi. He was just there to play, and they had to spare some energy to take care of him. Now that Master Li had spoken, they were eager. Professor Su said, "Okay, then we'll go first." On the same day, they set off for the western regions. In the hospital, Jin Su heard that his son's legs had been broken and hurried over from the capital. When he saw his son lying on the bed in a patient's clothes with his legs wrapped up, his eyes immediately turned red, and he was heartbroken. He only had one son and his legs had been broken. "Who is it? Who did it?" A Jin family disciple next to him said, "It's not clear yet. We'll know when young master wakes up." "Doctor, when will my son wake up?" The doctor said, "The anesthesia wore off long ago. He should have woken up long ago. He should have fallen asleep. It's a good thing to fall asleep, but when he wakes up, he still has to suffer pain." But before he could finish, Jin Shi, who was lying on the hospital bed, groaned in pain. "Son." Hearing the familiar voice, Jin Shi opened his eyes. He looked like he was about to cry. It was not only the physical pain, but also the pain in his heart. Jin-soo understood the pain in his son's heart. Who dares to do this to you? Jin, she said. It's Jiang Luoxia from Jiangnan. It's him. Jin-soo was stunned for a moment. How could it be him? But then his face darkened. It's fine if he flaunts his power in Jiangnan, but he dares to provoke the Jin family. Jin-shi, don't worry. I won't let him off easily. Tell me what's going on first. Jin-shi roughly explained. Jin-soo said. So he should be entering the desert now. Then let him die in the desert. Jin-shi said excitedly. Dad, what do you mean? Jin-soo said. Gudaji from Jiangnan has arrived. Jiangnan is a rich land. Coupled with the rapid economic development, many big shots have their eyes on that place. Jiang Luoxia has become the target of public criticism. Now is a good opportunity for us to get rid of Jiang Luoxia and enter Jiangnan. I will ask the elders to use the family's power to eliminate Jiang Luoxia. Chapter 155. Jin-shi was so shocked that he even forgot about the pain after the surgery. He couldn't help but want to sit up. Jin-soo motioned for him to lie down quickly. If he moved now, it would be troublesome if the wound was affected. Have a good rest. Dad, I want to go to the old house. The old house of the Jin family was the beginning of everything in the Jin family. It was also the holy land in the hearts of the Jin family members. Jin-shi heard this and was in awe. He watched his father walk out of the ward with firm steps. He was very excited. He thought that he would have to wait 10 or even 20 years for the humiliation yesterday. He didn't expect that he would be able to get revenge so soon. He was deeply proud to be a member of the Jin family. This was an old but well-preserved village. It looked like an ordinary village on the surface. There were people coming and going inside. Only a few people knew that this was the birthplace of the Jin family. In one of the courtyards. How dare he break the leg of a member of the Jin family? An old man smoking a pipe slammed the table angrily. He was so angry that the muscles on his face were trembling. He doesn't take the Jin family seriously. An old man in the seat of honor looked up at his grumpy brother and said, This Jiang Luoxia is not simple. He rose to power in Jiang City and later destroyed the Wang family. He climbed step by step to the top of the underworld in Jiangnan. Some people speculate that he may be a demigod. The smoking old man said with certainty, Impossible. If he was a demigod, the whole country would have known. The Jin family elder said, This person became famous in a battle with the legendary Wang family's demigod, Jiang Luoxia. He defeated him. But Wang Jianji is not on the demigod list. So everyone doubts whether Jiang Luoxia is a demigod. The smoking old man said, What do you mean? Are you afraid? If you don't go, I will. The elder in the seat of honor said. Old Six, why are you in such a hurry? I haven't finished speaking. Did I say that I would let it go? We brothers have nothing and took down the Jin family. Now that we have turned the situation around, who are we afraid of? The old man finally felt that it was reasonable. Then what do you mean? The elder sitting at the head of the table said. It's hard to say if Jiang Luoxia is a demigod, but he's definitely a mystic realm expert. If it was just a mystic realm, us brothers would be enough to deal with him, let alone in the desert. We came from the desert, but what if he's a demigod? I know what you want to say, but let's be careful. I will go and invite Brother Mu Sr. As soon as he said that, the audience was in an uproar. Even Jin-shi's eyes widened. The old man's face also changed greatly. Third brother, is it really worth it to do this to Jiang Luoxia? Elder brother Mu-san, aren't you overestimating that brat too much? The elder of the Jin family said, Jiang Luoxia has the potential to be the #1 person in Jiangnan's underworld. He even dares to give himself the title of a demigod. He is definitely not weak. Brother Mu-san will also be interested. All of you follow me. The group went out of the yard and walked into the depths of the village. Further in was the forbidden area of the Jin family. It looked no different from a village, but there was a person living inside. A young child was playing under a big tree at the entrance of the village. A group of more than 20 people came over. The leader was the elder of the Jin family. He came to the child and asked, "Little boy, where is Grandpa Moo?" The child pointed at a shabby old tiled house in front of them. The houses here looked like they were from the countryside in the 30s or 40s. They were all tiled and stone houses. An old man with messy hair was sitting in the middle of several children. There was also the sound of birds chirping from inside. When they came closer, they could see clearly that the old man's mouth was open. 2 birds were pecking at his teeth, cleaning the stains and rotten teeth inside. Elder brother Musun. Musun saw so many people coming over. His expression didn't change. He blew a breath and the 2 birds were blown away. After circling in the sky for a while, the old man called Elder brother Musun stretched out an arm and landed on them. "So many of you came looking for me. What's the matter?" The elder came back to his senses and said, "The family's disciples provoked a powerful and ruthless character. This person is called Jiang Luoxia. He's suspected to be a demigod." "Oh?" The originally expressionless face showed some interest. He turned around and used a broken cup to rinse his mouth. It seemed that the 2 birds were helping him brush his teeth. Another bird flew over with a towel in its mouth. The elder continued, "The reason why we suspect that this person is a demigod is because this person fought with Wang Jianji of the Wang family. Wang Jianji even died at his hands." Musun washed his face. "Wang Jianji? I met him 60 years ago. At that time he wasn't a demigod. However, he was already on the verge of becoming one. Whether or not he broke through to the demigod realm after 60 years in the water, the person who could kill him is definitely not simple. He's worth my time." "Where is Jiang Luoxia now?" "He's in the desert." At this time, in a small town on the edge of the desert, Jiang Xiu and his group were stopping at a market. Because they were already in a town on the edge of the desert, the wind carried the smell of sand. The passers-by were wearing headscarves. Otherwise, they would be covered in sand. Xiao Yinru was wearing a dark red headscarf, which made her skin look even whiter. She exuded an exotic aura. Everyone began to buy all kinds of desert supplies, especially water bottles. This was very important. Many people hesitated about how big they should buy. If it was too big, it wouldn't be easy to carry. If it was too small, it wouldn't hold much water. The other thing was camels. Camels weren't bought. Usually they would buy them from the locals and then hire a guide. "I still can't get through to young Master Jean. What should we do?" "I think we should set off now." Master Li, Expert Qian, and Professor Su were discussing. Professor Su looked around. Everyone had prepared everything. Since they couldn't get in touch with young Master Jean, they couldn't just wait. Young Master Jean has bodyguards. Even if we encounter desert bandits, we don't have to worry. But now, Expert Qian said, there were many tomb raiders in the desert, and many of them had guns. Professor Su said, then let's follow the normal archaeological process. Go to the garrison and get 2 soldiers here. What do you think, Master Li? Master Li himself and his 2 sons were all cultivators. They were skilled and daring, so they weren't afraid. However, they didn't have enough manpower to handle such a large group of people, so he nodded and said, since we are the government, of course we have to use the power of the government. Professor Su took the documents to the nearby garrison. How many camels do you need? Shen Duan asked Xiao Yinru. Since young Master Jean wasn't here, he seized the opportunity to get along with the beautiful girl. In addition to 1 for each person, we also need to rent a few more to transport goods. Yes. The guide nodded. Then let's make it 30-20. After speaking, Xiao Yinru went to choose the most suitable one for herself. It was her first time riding a camel. She was very excited. Shen Duan pulled the guide and asked, which one is the worst? You won't be able to walk and will be at the back. The guide hurriedly waved his hand and said, my camels are all good. None of them are bad. Shen Duan was really depressed. This person was so stupid. I mean, give me a bad one. Do you understand? As he said that, he took out a red card and handed it over. He wanted to deal with Jiang Xiu alone. When the time came, he would be at the back. It would be best to just leave him alone in the desert. Aren't you arrogant? I'll let you be. Yes. In the distance, Jiang Xiu stopped in front of a stall full of herbs. He didn't think the desert could threaten him. The only thing that could hurt him was bleeding. Blood was the foundation of Protoss. Also, dehydration would make him uncomfortable. So he had to solve these two problems. Is this Chunqing grass? The seller was an old man from the western regions. He nodded and said, yes, 50 yuan each. No one would buy it for 50 yuan if it was placed outside. This is 7 blood ginseng. 100 yuan. Qiu Yinru had come to his side. She saw that Jiang Xiu didn't buy anything. He didn't even buy glasses to block sand. Instead, he was buying herbs. She couldn't help but ask, why are you buying these useless things? Jiang Xiu said as he picked the herbs. If they're useless, why would he set up a stall here? Pretending to know when you don't know. Chapter 156. Jiang Xiu was amused. This girl was the one who came over to ask, but she said that he was pretending to know. Wasn't she contradicting herself? He picked up some ground powder and said, this is Star Awakening grass, right? Give me some of this too. The scariest thing in the desert was severe dehydration. Not only would it affect the body's functions, but it would also cause hallucinations. It was very scary. 50 yuan for a pack. Give me 2 packs. Being unable to walk due to dehydration and having hallucinations, it was impossible to walk out of the desert. Therefore, severe dehydration in the desert almost meant death. However, Star Awakening grass would not cause hallucinations. If one really encountered severe dehydration, Star Awakening grass would be a life-saving elixir. However, those who didn't know, such as Qiu Yinru, who was beside Jiang Xiu, first asked curiously, what's this powder for? Jiang Xiu ignored Qiu Yinru. However, the stall owner wanted to do business and said, buy it, buy it. It can save lives and refresh the mind. Miss, do you want 2 packs? Qiu Yinru shook her head and said, it's too expensive. 100 yuan for 2 packs of powder was a bit expensive. To put it bluntly, it was picking Star Awakening grass, drying it and grinding it into powder. It was a no-cost deal, but it also depended on where it was sold. The same cup of water at a roadside stall was much cheaper than at a 5-star hotel. It was even more priceless in the desert. Jiang Xiu spent more than 500 yuan on the medicinal herbs here. In addition, he bought 3 water skin bags, filled them with water, and put them into his bag. He didn't buy anything else. It could be said that he was traveling light. Jiang Xiu and Qiu Yinru looked in the distance. A military jeep drove over, leaving behind a cloud of dust. The car drove all the way to the town hall where they were now. A soldier in a camouflage uniform and a submachine gun jumped out of the car first. Then Professor Su got out of the car. Then the driver was also in a camouflage uniform. Students, these 2 are the soldiers assigned to us by the garrison to ensure our safety along the way. This is Captain Lung, and this is Comrade Little Zhang. The local garrison is very supportive of our archaeological expedition this time. Captain Lung and Comrade Xiaozhang are the best soldiers in the army and martial arts experts. Let's give him a round of applause. Pa pa pa. The students applauded excitedly. They had never seen a soldier with a submachine gun on his back. They were in awe. The 2 of them gave a military salute to the people present. Among them, only Li Qingji and his son, as well as Jiang Xiu, disagreed. Little Qiu, is everyone ready? Qiu Yinru took out the list and checked the number of people, then said, everyone is ready. We can set off at any time. Just like that, a professor, 3 experts, 2 warriors, 3 mages, and 18 students formed the expedition team for the ancient desert city. Alright, then let's officially set off. The mighty troop set off towards the desert. Jiang Xiu was riding on a camel. He didn't feel too good because the camel he was sitting on seemed weak and slow. However, he didn't feel too bad because the warrior called Captain Lung, who was in his early 30s, had stayed behind. With someone to cushion his back, Jiang Xiu didn't feel that he was too slow. You don't seem to fit in. Captain Lung's all-around cool was called Cold War. He had dark skin, a resolute face, and a local accent. He looked like a tough guy and didn't have much expression on his face when he spoke. They're paying for it. I'm paying for it. Captain Lung suddenly understood. I heard that the archaeological mission this time is very important. It's to find the lost ancient ruins. To be honest, I've been here since I was 16, and I've been here for almost 20 years. I've heard a lot of similar legends, and I've encountered desert tomb robbers who did everything they could to capture them. However, no one has actually seen the ancient city of Sahagan, Jiang Xiu said. Then why did you follow us into the desert? Cold War said. I have to carry out the mission given by my superiors. Besides, it's also my responsibility to protect you. I don't want anything to happen to you in the desert. The weather in the desert is terrible, but the people are even more terrible. Jiang Xiu said. You mean? Cold War said. The bandits in the desert are far more fierce than those outside. The desert has become their natural protection. Some people even organize armies and build countries in the desert. They walked towards the center of the desert and reached the White Camel Peak after a day. According to ancestor Xie Sanxian's deduction, their direction was right. They kept going west. After 7 days and 7 nights in the desert, they were completely lost. In other words, they had to keep going west for the first 7 days. After that, the specific direction would depend on the materials collected by the experts to find the corresponding geographical characteristics. Unknowingly, the sky darkened. The desert's climate was harsh, and physical exhaustion was very high. They had to ensure that they had enough rest, so they didn't continue traveling as soon as the sky turned dark. Everyone rested on the spot, set up tents, and boiled water to cook. Professor Su and the others gathered together to study the map. According to the records of the Ming Dynasty, the ancient desert city is the ruins of the Protoss. Therefore, there are often strange phenomena in the sky where the ruins are located. According to the records, it doesn't rain in other places in the desert, but the ancient desert city does. There is even an underground drainage system in it. Professor Qian Deshen said. Professor Su pushed up his glasses and said, many of the folk records are exaggerated. The author likes to add his own imagination to describe it. We have to believe in science. Gods only exist in the form of faith, but they don't really exist. Professor Su was an atheist. When he talked to Jiang Xiu, he revealed this view. Qian Deshen said, why, Professor Su, do you think there is no God in this world? Professor Su smiled and shook his head. There is. An extremely determined voice sounded. Everyone looked over and saw that it was the Archmage Li Qingji. He stood up and walked over slowly. There is a God in this world. The two of you are scholars, so you might not know, but there are actually some underground forces under the surface of our world. They are a group of martial artists. You can also think of them as the underworld. The underground forces have a list called the demigod list. This is something we all know. Some of them have lived for more than 100 years, and some have even lived for more than 200 years. The professors and experts had never heard of this before, and the students were all in disbelief. Professor Su said, Master Li, are you joking? Li Qingji shook his head and said, this is the truth. Those who come into contact with the higher levels of the underground forces all agree. There are 13 people on the demigod list in our country, and there are also experts from other countries. Professor Su, after this trip to the desert, if you have any doubts, you can go to Sichuan. There are many legends about gods and sword immortals in Sichuan, and there is a lot of evidence left behind. The one in Sichuan is still on the demigod list. Professor Su smiled. He did not like to argue with people. In his heart, the so-called Archmage was just a trick. To put it bluntly, it was a lowly way of life. It was all a trick to deceive people. Of course, he did not deny this ability, nor did he deny his role in entering the tomb. However, in his heart, he was still biased. This was the character of a scholar. Professor, you still don't believe me? Li Qingji said, Professor, you have studied historical antiques and relics all your life. Haven't you found some mysterious things that science can't solve? Professor Su said, Of course I have. There are many things that science can't solve, but this doesn't mean that there are gods. It's just that my science and technology have not reached that level yet. In another 50 or 100 years, many of the mysteries that can't be solved now will be solved. Li Qingji said, controlling flames, walking on water, killing people within 100 steps. Are these also related to science? Professor Su said, Of course. In his opinion, there was no difference between a magician playing with fire and a magician playing with fire. He even saw a magician in a video who stayed in the water for an entire day. There were people lying flat in the void. These were nothing more than illusions. It was just that one could not solve the mystery. Once it was exposed, it was worthless. The two of them started arguing as they talked. The air was filled with confusion and the smell of gunpowder. The students and experts naturally sided with the professor. The professor said, "Master Li believes that there are gods in this world. May I ask, have you seen them?" Li Qingji said, his face froze. Gods were illusory. Even if it was a demigod, they did not dare to say that there were gods. They could only vaguely feel that there were gods. Chapter 157. There were many things that could not be concluded without seeing it with one's own eyes. Professor Su was an academic and liked to argue with people. Li Qingji said, "Believe it or not, God is there. It's just that you can't see or hear it." Professor Su said, "If God really exists in the ancient desert city, then why was it buried by the wind and sand? Logically speaking, it should have existed for a long time." Li Qingji was stumped again. In terms of eloquence, how could he not be compared to a professor? He thought for a moment and said with uncertainty, "Maybe it moved away or encountered an external enemy." When Jiang Xiu heard this, he thought in his heart. According to Xie Sanxian, there were many huge statues in the ancient desert city. There was a god. It was not impossible for a god to resist the natural weather of the desert with the power of a god. It was not worthwhile to move. There was only one explanation for a god to give up his place. It was that he encountered an external enemy. Professor Su said, "Since it's a god, is there an enemy that he can't deal with?" Li Qingji said, "Of course there is." Ha ha ha. Professor Su laughed. "Master, you're getting more and more right. Shouldn't a god control the world and be omnipotent? How can there be an enemy that he can't deal with?" Li Qingji said, "For example, a god that is more powerful than him." Professor Su said, "Master Li, we're archaeologists, not writers. Everything has to be based on historical information and the effects given by cultural relics. We can't make wild guesses. If there was no evidence, they could say whatever they wanted, but it would lack persuasiveness." That night, everyone slept in tents with sleeping bags. It was enough to withstand the sudden drop in temperature in the desert at night. However, Jiang Xiu was the only one. He did not bring anything with him. He only took out a thin layer of cloth from his backpack and spread it on the ground. Then he lay down on it. For Jiang Xiu, the harsh weather in the desert and the huge temperature difference between day and night did not affect him much. "Inru, why aren't you sleeping?" Feeling Qiu Inru moving around in the same tent, Xiaoyan could not help but say, "We still have to hurry tomorrow." Qiu Inru pulled open the tent flap a little and looked out through the gap. The bonfire was burning brightly. Through the light, she could see Jiang Xiu lying on the sand in the distance. If he slept like this for a night, even if he could resist the sudden drop in temperature, he would suffer a lot. He would be buried in the sand the next day. "Who asked you to be so unsociable? Now you're going to suffer." Qiu Inru said, "Inru." Xiaoyan said, "What can happen? He deserves it. Who asked him to follow us? If he wanted to follow us, so be it. He didn't even bring anything. He thinks he's a young master. Ignore him and go to sleep. If he really can't take it, he'll bow down to the professor or the male classmates." Inru, Cold War came out of the tent and slowly came to where Jiang Xiu was. Seeing him lying on the sand, he said, "Come to my place." Jiang Xiu said, "It's okay. You can go to sleep." Cold War looked deeply at Jiang Xiu. The temperature was probably below 30 degrees, but Jiang Xiu was normal. It seemed that he could withstand the cold. Looking at his hands as a pillow, he seemed to be very relaxed. He nodded and returned to the tent. In his heart, he suspected that Jiang Xiu might be a martial cultivator. The night was very long, but for Jiang Xiu, it was a rare and comfortable night. The desert was huge, and he felt like he was one with the world. He held the longevity stone talisman and entered a state of cultivation. The blood in his body gradually became restless. Popping sounds were heard. This was the prelude to the awakening of the god race. The membrane in his blood was about to burst open, and the power hidden in his blood was about to break free. Boom! The membrane exploded, and Jiang Xiu felt as if his entire body had exploded. Then it suddenly shrank back, and the divine power in his body surged. The 63rd rune was revealed. Soon, from the font there shouldn't be many strokes left. There were only a few strokes left at the bottom, and it should be the end. When the time came, he would have a complete rune, the so-called divine talisman, and become a true god. Gods had a great advantage over immortals, and that was their bodies. In addition to strength and defense, the body also included longevity. Gods, especially those of high-level races, had an almost unlimited lifespan. Immortals, on the other hand, had to undergo tribulations to increase their lifespan. In other words, after Jiang Xiu became a true god, he would have a very long lifespan. This was something that humans could never hope to achieve. Then, he would have enough time to wait for his disciple to deliver the cultivation materials to him. He would advance by leaps and bounds, and return to the immortal martial continent. The next day, Qiu Yinru was the first to wake up. When she woke up, she found that Jiang Xiu was already standing at the top of a sand dune. He had his hands behind his back, and was looking at the slowly rising sun. She was astonished. He was really fine. The members of the exploration team came out of their tents one after another. After washing up and eating breakfast, the exploration team continued their journey. 5 days later, the sun was very strong, and when it shone on the desert, smoke rose. The air was distorted, and there wasn't a bit of moisture. The exploration team walked between the sand dune with difficulty. The whole team had lost the relaxed look they had when they first set off. Many people had haggard faces, and their skin was dry. Their lips were cracked and had traces of blood. Every movement was very strenuous, and they were like sick patients. Physical exhaustion was one thing, but more importantly, it was their hearts that collapsed. The so-called Dragon Gathering Dune was the place where the Ming Dynasty army got lost. They had searched for a long time but still couldn't find it. "I'm so tired. Can we rest for a while?" The number of requests for rest increased. Professor Su, who was good at arguing with others, didn't have the strength to do so. The students couldn't sit directly on the ground. It was too hot. They had to find a shady place and let the camels rest. Li Chengji and his 2 sons were in a relatively better state, but they were not in a better state. They licked their lips from time to time, and they were also exhausted. The 2 soldiers were in a slightly better state. One of them was at the front, and the other was at the back. They were carrying submachine guns at all times. Even at a time like this, when they were too tired to even move their fingers, they were constantly vigilant. Only Jiang Xiu was as calm as when they first set off. What kind of monster is this? Isn't he tired? Shen Duan and the others couldn't understand. This kid's stamina was so good, even better than a soldier's. After being tortured in the desert for so many days, he was still fine. What's that sound? They felt the entire ground shaking, and it was getting closer and closer. There were also gunshots, and everyone was shocked. Suddenly, the entire hot sand dune area fell into a state of panic. The people who were resting on the ground quickly stood up. What happened? Beep, beep, beep. Machine gun fire. This can't be gunshots, right? Shen Duan and the other students were even more frightened. Yes, everyone, get down. The 2 soldiers were very familiar with the sound of gunshots. They immediately gathered in the middle with their submachine guns and shouted at everyone. The sound was getting closer. Jiang Xiu looked over and saw 2 people fleeing in front. It seemed to be a man and a woman. Behind them, a group of people was chasing them. It would have been fine if they had fled to other places, but they were fleeing in the direction of their group. "It's Meng Fei's gang," Xiao Zhang shouted. "Captain, what should we do?" Cold War's mind worked quickly. Their mission was to protect the safety of the exploration team, but they couldn't just leave the 2 people being chased by desert bandits outside. Moreover, they had already been exposed. "Do it." Cold War lowered his body and circled around the other side. Xiao Zhang circled around from the other side. The professors, experts, and students were scared out of their wits. Beep, beep, beep. The air was filled with the sound of gunshots. With a bang, the man fell to the ground. Blood poured out of his chest. Quick, miss, quick. Before he could finish, he died on the spot. Fourth uncle. Tears fell from the woman's eyes. She gritted her teeth, abandoned the body, and ran for her life. It's her. Jiang Xiu was shocked. The woman was only 16 or 17 years old. She was extremely beautiful. Even in such a sorry state, it couldn't hide her beauty. It was Xie Sanxian's daughter, Xie Ting. Why is she here? Chapter 158. The number of enemies exceeded the estimation of the two soldiers. There were more than 10 of them, and they were not riding camels but horses. They were as fast as the wind, and machine guns were firing all the way. They had no choice but to roll to the side and hide behind the sand dune. In the blink of an eye, they were surrounded. Meng Fei's bandits were also surprised by the appearance of such a large group of people. The leader was a man in his 30s or 40s. He had a strong body and was very rough. He watched as Xie Ting screamed and rolled down the sand dune into the crowd. He pulled on the reins of his horse. Who are you people? Professor Su and the others were already trembling in fear. No one dared to answer the question. Jiang Xiu went over to help Xie Ting up and asked, "Are you okay?" Xie Ting's face was pale and she subconsciously shook her head. Suddenly, her eyes widened and she was very surprised. "It's you?" Jiang Xiu asked. "Why are you here?" Xie Ting said, "I." At this time, they were surrounded by more than 10 riders. Although the two soldiers still had guns in their hands, they were ignored by the bandits. In their eyes, they were not a threat at all. The boorish man said, "If you don't want me to kill this group of people, you better be obedient and put down your guns." As he spoke, he had already flipped over from the horse's back and strode forward. His feet stepped on the sand very forcefully, appearing very domineering. His eyes swept across the group of people who suddenly broke in. They were all old and young and looked very haggard. They did not look like people who were often in the desert. "I'm asking you, who are you?" Professor Su gathered his courage. He was the person in charge here. He struggled to stand up and said, "I'm a professor from Imperial College. These are my students. We're here to do archaeology." Professor Su's words were the same as his judgment. The person asked, "Archaeology? What project?" Professor Su said, "The ancient desert city." When these words were said, the bandits and Li Ting's faces changed. The bandit leader said, "You're saying that you're here to do archaeology?" "Yes." The bandit said, "Do you know where the ancient desert city is?" Professor Su raised the information in his hand and said, "We're looking for it." "Ha ha ha." The bandit laughed and turned to look at Li Ting. "It seems that there are a lot of people who want to go to the ancient desert city, but only you know where it is?" Hearing this, everyone looked at Li Ting. The young girl pursed her lips and didn't say anything. "You know?" Professor Su was so shocked that he forgot his fear as he stared at Li Ting. This kind of senior academic would often forget about other things when it came to pursuing academics. Jiang Xiu was no stranger to this. He had found some clues in Xie Sanxian's house. Xie Sanxian's ancestors were said to be generals of the Ming dynasty, but his appearance betrayed him. Xie Sanxian's eye rings were a little different from traditional Han Chinese, and so was Xie Ting. They were a little like mixed blood. Although the mixed blood was very thin, Jiang Xiu was very sensitive to bloodlines, so he could feel it. Xie Sanxian also had the longevity stone talisman in his hands. The Xie family had a deep relationship with the ancient desert city. "Does it really exist?" Professor Su asked. The bandit said, "Of course it exists. If it doesn't exist, then why would our Miss Xie bring her servants into the desert? Isn't she afraid that her dark skin won't be beautiful?" Xie Ting remained silent, not talking. The bandit gestured for his subordinates to grab someone. A nearby student was caught. Even now Jiang Xiu didn't know his name. He seemed to be in his 3rd year. A gun was pressed against his head. He was so scared that his legs trembled. "Don't kill me, don't kill me," the bandit said. "Miss Xie, how do we get to the ancient desert city from here?" Xie Ting's beautiful eyes flashed. She couldn't bear to see him like this, but she still kept her mouth shut. Bang! His head exploded and he fell into a pool of blood. Ah! The crowd cried out in alarm. When the bandits went to catch them again, the two soldiers wanted to move, but they were stopped by several guns. The members of the expedition team were scared and shrank back. The nearest student was caught, and he immediately wailed, Don't kill me. I'm just here to have fun. I don't want to do archaeology. I don't want to do it anymore. Cold War shouted, Meng Fei, that's enough. If you want to kill, then kill me. You know me? Not bad. You're a border guard. Meng Fei glanced at him, and then looked back at Xieting. How do we get to the ancient desert city from here? Xieting still didn't respond. Professor Su shouted, Miss Xie, you said it. Antiques are dead, but people are alive. Bang. Another shot. The second person was killed. Ah. This time, the crowd was even more restless. If this continued, they would all be killed. Xieting said softly, Mr. Jiang, can't you deal with these bandits? That day at Bodhi Biogenetics, Jiang Xiu could kill people with a raise of his hand. Xie Sanxian told her that Jiang Xiu was a demigod. Jiang Xiu said, They have guns. You don't want me to die, right? Cold War and Little Zhang looked at the two dead people and were heartbroken. As soldiers, seeing the people they protected die in front of them was worse than being killed. A gun was pressed against the third person's head. How do we get to the ancient desert city from here? Bang. After the third person was killed, the crowd looked at the group of bandits in horror. Their eyes were filled with grief, and a few girls hugged each other in fear. Mother ***. Meng Fei was angry. He killed 3 people in a row. Xieting didn't say anything. She raised her gun and fired. Suddenly, the crowd was screaming. No. If Cold War and the others hadn't been shot, they would have killed them. Ah, the crowd screamed. 6 or 7 people fell to the ground dead. One was shot in the thigh and one in the arm. You don't want to talk? I'll kill them all and then I'll kill you. The crowd was terrified. Miss Xie, please talk. Please talk. They knew begging the bandits was useless, so they all begged Xieting. Xieting's face was gloomy. She couldn't say anything about that place even if she died. But with so many lives at stake, she hesitated. I'll count to 3. 3, 2, 1, beep. 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 The robber pulled the trigger, and the bullet shells popped out one by one. Xieting couldn't bear to look at the people who had fallen. She felt a deep sense of guilt. Finally, she couldn't help but shout, Okay, I'll talk. The gunshots stopped. A few more people died. About 60 miles south from here is the dragon gathering sand vein. When we get there, I'll have to relocate. The bandit pointed his gun at the sky and smiled. You should have said so earlier. I wasted so many bullets. Don't waste time. Let's go immediately. The surviving members of the expedition didn't dare to continue. They couldn't escape. Of course, they had to find a way to leave the desert. Hurry up, Professor Su said. We were not going, the bandit said. You have to go. If Miss Xie plays any tricks on us, who will we find to kill? His words made the faces of the people who were still alive turn green. As it turned out, this was what they were doing now. Spurred on by this group of bandits, their movements became much faster. Whoever dared to be slow would be treated to lotus seed soup. Half a day after they left, another group of people arrived. Tribe leader, there seems to be a situation in front. The leader got off the camel and ran over to take a look. The ground was littered with corpses. He touched the blood that hadn't flowed out and said loudly, They all died by force. From their clothes, they should be students from Imperial College. The blood hasn't dried yet. It should have happened not long ago. Shot. The tribe leader said, Big brother Musun, what do you think? Musun said, This is strange. Did they meet bandits? Jiang Luoxia can't even deal with a group of bandits. The dead are all students from Imperial College. Don't worry about it. They shouldn't be too far ahead. Let's speed up and catch up. The tribe leader nodded. There were still footprints on the ground. If there was a sandstorm later, the tracks would be obliterated. It would be even more difficult to track down Jiang Luoxia's whereabouts. The group immediately followed the footprints on the ground. Chapter 159. With Xieting leading the way, their journey was much smoother. As the sun gradually set, the wind became stronger and stronger, sweeping up sand into the air. In this kind of weather, if they were not careful, they would encounter a tornado. The sand dunes on both sides were exceptionally high. As they walked on the path, it felt like they were entering a canyon. This is the place where the dragon dunes are gathered. Professor Su and the others, who had already lost all interest in exploring and only wanted to escape as soon as possible, could not help but take out the information for comparison. The drawing on the information was 90% similar to the surrounding sand dunes. It's here, it's here. The professor and the experts nodded with certainty. Meng Fei saw this and smiled. Xieting was tactful and did not play any tricks with him. She asked, "Next we should go that way." Xieting pointed to one of the paths and said, "If we go further down this path, we will reach Thousand Ghosts Cliff. However, looking at the weather, it seems like a sandstorm is coming." People who had been in the desert for a long time were best at observing the weather. If they encountered a sandstorm, they would have a slim chance of survival. Meng Fei said, "A sandstorm is coming." Sang Bao, catch someone to practice darts. Xieting was stunned and felt indignant. It was not up to her to decide whether a sandstorm would come or not. Why should she kill people? However, if she insisted on going through Thousand Ghosts Cliff, not only would these weak students die, her chances of survival would also be very low. It was as if her life was in the hands of God. It was all up to luck. "Don't catch the students, catch me," Warrior Xiaozhang said. Meng Fei said, "Okay, catch him." Xieting said coldly, "If you want to go, then go. When the time comes, you won't be able to get anything out of it." Xieting knew that according to the character of this group of bandits, if they really reached the ancient desert city, few of them would be able to survive. It was better to fight with them. Jiang Xiu had also read about Ghost Cliff before. It was also a strange place in the desert. There were many weathered rocks on both sides, and they were all black in color. When the wind blew, the sound that came out of the bumpy rocks sounded like the howling of ghosts. In addition to the dark clouds in the sky ahead, a storm could be faintly seen. It was very scary. The wind on the ground was already very strong, making it difficult for them to move forward. However, Meng Fei and his gang were like demons, forcing them to pass through Thousand Ghosts Cliff. Ah! With a scream, a suitcase was swept up into the sky. One of Meng Fei's group said, "Big brother, we can't go any further. If we go any further, we'll all be blown away. It's better if we hide in the sand." Meng Fei cursed fiercely. Enter the cliff. The walls were about 20 to 30 meters high, and the paths inside were complicated. If they walked too deep, they might not be able to get out, so they stayed at the entrance. After entering, Meng Fei even let Sang Bao play darts. This person looked fierce, but he was actually very good at intimidating people. If it was too easy, not only would he let his guard down, these people would also have thoughts of escaping or resisting. "Let me do it." Little Zhang walked out angrily. Towards this group of bandits, he gnashed his teeth in hatred. Xiao Zhang stood with his back against the wall. Sang Leopard, who was opposite him, revealed a smile. However, no matter how you looked at it, it was an evil smile. He held a dagger in his hand. The blade was very sharp and could easily pierce into a person's body. "You better not move. If not, my dart will miss its target and hit your head." The students were already so scared that they almost stopped breathing. They had seen this kind of performance in the circus. There were also street performers, but those were all sideshows. However, this was real. They could lose their lives at any moment. Qiu Yinru and the other girls were so scared that they didn't even dare to look. Coming. Little Zhang's face was flushed red. He was very brave, but that didn't mean that he wasn't afraid of death. So, with a flash of white light, Little Zhang suddenly closed his eyes. The crowd gasped in shock, but they heard Morning Bao say, "You have some guts." That flying dagger had sliced open his cheek and pierced deep into the rock. Little Zhang's life was saved. Phew! Everyone let out a sigh of relief. However, Sang Leopard's next sentence made everyone's hearts collapse. "Next, what?" The exploration team members were all incomparably angry. This was playing them to death. However, in front of 10 cold machine guns, they didn't dare to resist. Otherwise, they would be shot. Li Chengji suddenly said. This kind of throwing knife is unbearable to look at. The originally proud Sang Leopard's face turned cold when he heard this. What did you say? Li Chengji said. I said that your throwing knife isn't good. Stop showing off here. If you don't believe me, we can have a competition. Interesting, Meng Fei said. I have also heard of Master Li's name. Then let's all play. If you win, then this game is over. If you lose, then I'll kill one person. Li Chengji said. Alright, it's a deal. Li Lei, you compete with him. His son responded and walked out. His face was pale. He should be very nervous, but he didn't hesitate. How can we compete? Li Chengji said. There is a rock there. Of course, whoever shoots the deepest wins. The rocks in the desert were somewhat soft, but some were incomparably hard. That rock was incomparably hard. For Sang Leopard to be able to pierce it with his throwing knife was already very good. All right. Xieting softly said to Jiang Xiao. Is there any way? Let's exterminate this group of bandits. Even if I bring them to the ancient desert city, they still won't let us go. Jiang Xiao said. How do we exterminate them? They have guns. In Xieting's heart, Jiang Xiao wasn't this kind of person. He was very strong and could kill people with a raise of his hand. Along the way, he had killed 7 or 8 people with a flick of his finger. How could he be afraid of a bandit's gun? They were in the crowd, so it was inevitable that their words would be heard. Shin Duan was on the side and softly said, Don't count on him. He is just a piece of trash. It's all his fault. He's so slow. Otherwise, we wouldn't have met the bandits. Shin Duan vented his fear and anger on Jiang Xiao. He didn't know that Jiang Xiao was slow because he purposely gave him an inferior camel. That's right, he's a jinx. You're still counting on him. The surrounding students all agreed. They all looked like they wanted to beat up Jiang Xiao. When Xieting heard this, she roughly knew that these people didn't know what kind of person Jiang Xiao was. Otherwise, they wouldn't have dared to complain. She didn't respond to them and looked at the field. She asked, Who will win? Jiang Xiao said, Li Lei. The professor and the students had different opinions. It was good to be wronged, but the reality was often cruel. Why? Jiang Xiao smiled faintly. His gaze fell on Li Lei. Li Lei knows how to use his internal energy. The invisible force is superior to the visible force. This is the truth. Xieting didn't necessarily understand what he was saying. The visible force was the so-called direct physical force. The invisible force such as qi, mental power, curse power, or even transcendence energy. These forces couldn't be seen or touched, but they truly existed. Some of these forces were so strong that it was hard to imagine. Those with high transcendence energy could overturn rivers and seas. They could raise the surface of the sea 100 feet high and not fall back down. This was not something that could be done by the so-called visible force. Pung. Li Lei's dagger shot out with a white light. It was so fast that it couldn't be seen. The dagger had already sunk deep into the rock, all the way to the hilt. Hua. The field couldn't help but go into an uproar. The group of bandits all revealed looks of shock. Sang Bao's dagger had sunk 3 inches into the rock, but Li Lei's entire blade had sunk into the rock. Good, very good. Meng Fei said. I only knew that the Spirit Tomb sect was good at robbing tombs, but I didn't know that their martial arts cultivation was also so high. You can protect one person's life and go to the safe zone. Li Lei didn't hesitate. My father. Meng Fei said. Good. Master Li, please go to the safe zone. Li Qingji nodded and walked towards the safe zone. Pung. Suddenly a gunshot rang out. Li Lei's head was shot through and he fell into a pool of blood. Li Lei. Li Qingji loudly shouted. You guys didn't keep your word. Meng Fei said. We kept our word and let one of you go. Master Li, your son is very filial. He used his life to exchange for yours. I'm really happy for you. The sound of wind and sand whistling came from outside. A sandstorm was coming. Even if they were inside the rock, they could feel the strong wind blowing. The sky was filled with flying sand. The entire ground seemed like it was going to be swept up by the wind. At this time, The two warriors finally exploded. They charged at the bandits and snatched their guns. When the wind filled the world, they could only see the flashes of the guns. They couldn't even hear the sound of the bullets being fired. They resisted. They finally resisted. Chapter 160. Gunfire shot in all directions, bursting out with amazing lethality. Outside the sandstone, the storm was howling, and the eardrums were hurting. After a full 10 to 20 minutes, the storm outside finally faded away. The sky was filled with yellow sand falling like rain, recreating the desert atmosphere. The sandstone wall slowly lit up, and what appeared inside was a creepy and unbelievable scene. There were several ghastly skeletons standing in the middle of the field, and they were still in a fighting posture. They even held machine guns in their hands, and there were clothes falling vertically at their feet. Not far away, Lilei's body had also become a skeleton. In an instant, the entire Guichinyan sandstone wall became eerie and strange. How could this be? The voice was still trembling. Such a strange scene simply made people's hair stand on end. This was much more terrifying than bandits killing people. Ah! A girl screamed. She turned her head and found that the classmate beside her had also become a pile of bones, and he was standing right next to her. Ghost? Regardless of whether it was the bandits or the members of the expedition team, they could not care less. Even the air in the sandstone cave was filled with gloom and terror, and they desperately fled out of the cave. This was definitely not something a human could do, turning a person into a pile of bones. Even a brilliant anatomist could not do it. It felt more like being eaten dry. But when they escaped, they found that the scenery outside had completely changed. It was completely different from when they had just entered, as if they were in another desert. What made them even more desperate was that the sun had set behind the mountain, and the sky was turning dark. What should we do? Meng Fei's face was also very ugly. 6 of his brothers had died, and including him, there were less than 10 people left. The expedition team had more than 10 people left, and half of them had died. The horses had long fled, and the camels were loyal. When they encountered sandstorms, they would lie on the ground and use their bodies to shield their masters. But this time, almost all of them had fled. A terrible haze shrouded everyone's heart. The curtain of night was approaching silently. What should we do? Should we escape or stay? The horses and camels had all fled, and they carried water on their backs. There was very little left with them, and it was not enough for them to walk out of the desert. Moreover, now that the sandstorm had stirred up, they did not know where they were. If he stayed, he would only be waiting for death. Moreover, Guiqinya was so strange. F*ck leaving is death, staying is also death. I've long heard that Guiqinya is evil, and I really fell for it. Boss, let's just kill all of them. Then, we'll think of a way to return to the main camp. When Xieting heard that he wanted to kill them, she said, save it. Once night falls, no one can leave the 1,000 Ghost Cliff. It's said that it's a ghost wall. When the bandits heard this, their faces turned pale. Little bitch, who are you trying to scare? Xieting glanced at him coldly. Believe it or not, everything that had happened inside was enough to prove that this place was very strange. In addition, they had stayed in the desert for many years, and had heard some rumors about Guiqinya. Meng Fei said, then what does Miss Xie think? His tone was much more polite than before. Xieting said, let's rest here for the night. We'll think of a way tomorrow. Sangbao shouted and pointed the gun in his hand at Xieting. F*ck B*tch, are you trying to kill us? This place is so strange, Xieting said. If something happens, won't we be the last ones to die? If something really happened, of course no one would be able to escape. Meng Fei spat out 2 words. Stay. Sangbao was in disbelief. Big brother. If I say stay then stay. If they couldn't get out and wandered around, then they would be wasting their energy. Meng Fei had his own considerations. His subordinates didn't dare to say anything and could only rest on the spot. Meng Fei said, if I'm not wrong, this place shouldn't be far from the ancient desert city. It would take 5 or 6 days to get out of the desert, but less than a day to get there. Miss Xie, can you bring us there tomorrow? Xie Ting obviously didn't want to bring this group of bandits, but the only way now was to go to the ancient desert city. Otherwise, they would all die in the desert. She went to the rock beside Jiang Xiao and sat down. She didn't answer him. It could be considered a silent agreement. What do we do? The food and water are all on the camels. It's all gone. Is there any water? Most of the people in the exploration team shook their heads. At this point, water was life. It was more valuable than gold. If they had some on them, they would just treat it as if they had no water. Gulp gulp. The sound of drinking water could be heard. Everyone looked over and saw that it was Jiang Xiao sitting on the rock with a confident look on his face. He raised his head and admired the beautiful scenery in the distance. Far away, the sandstorm still hadn't dissipated. Miss Xie, will you dislike me for drinking it? Jiang Xiao handed it over. Xie Ting was definitely thirsty. Her originally tender red lips were dry. This was life-saving water. No matter how reserved or misophobic she was, she couldn't care less. She sincerely said, "Thank you." Then she reached out and took it. She didn't dare to drink too much. She only drank a little to moisten her throat before handing it back to Jiang Xiao. Jiang Xiao smiled and said, "It's fine. Drink more." Xie Ting thanked him again before drinking in large mouthfuls. Then she remembered that she was too thirsty and was showing signs of dehydration. After drinking, she stuck out her tongue and licked her lips. She saw Jiang Xiao looking at her with a smile in his eyes. Her face couldn't help but heat up slightly. Only then did she hand the goatskin flask back to Jiang Xiao. Not far away, the people in the exploration team were all green with envy. Shen Duan walked over to Jiang Xiao and said, "Jiang Xiao, can you let me have a sip too?" Jiang Xiao smiled faintly. "Do you think I will give it to you?" Shen Duan's expression was ugly. "No, you won't," Jiang Xiao said. "Then why are you still asking?" Shen Duan was very angry. "I put down my face to beg you, and you have this kind of attitude. Jiang Xiao, don't go too far. After all, we are a team." Jiang Xiao said, "Aren't you ashamed to say this?" Shen Duan had fantasized that Jiang Xiao would sooner or later run out of water. At that time, he would beg him like a dog, and then he would ruthlessly humiliate him. But he didn't expect that the reality was the opposite. The people who ran out of water were the ones who brought enough water. And that person who was dressed simply still had water. It was a great irony. "We were wrong in the past. We apologize to you. Jiang Xiao, don't lower yourself to our level." Jiang Xiao said, "If you said this to me before you ran out of water, I would believe you and forgive you. Unfortunately, you are saying this now because you want my water. In order to please Jin Shi, you joined with your classmates to isolate me. In order to survive, you bent your knees to me. You make me feel disgusted. Get lost, don't let me see you." Shen Duan's face was ashen. "You." Everyone in the exploration team looked at him. They didn't think so before, but now that they heard Jiang Xiao say it, Shen Duan's character was actually so low. Qiu Yinru's face revealed a look of shame. She didn't think that she had done anything wrong, especially since Jiang Xiao had always done things his way. But now she understood that Jiang Xiao was a very sincere person. At the very least, he wasn't a hypocrite. Moreover, he really wanted to come to the ancient desert city. From the beginning, he was full of sincerity. She had first agreed, but after he solved the problem, she went back on her words. At this moment, she felt regret for what she had done. She could have refused from the beginning, but she couldn't go back on her words after agreeing. She even wanted to obstruct Jiang Xiao's trip. She had always thought that going out to explore was a privilege. Now that she was in such a predicament, she realized that she was wrong. It seemed that she owed him an apology. However, according to Jiang Xiao's personality, he wouldn't accept it. Moreover, if she apologized now, Jiang Xiao would definitely think that she was greedy for his water. "Brat, you have a lot of water. Why are you giving it to others?" Meng Fei's group had already noticed Jiang Xiao. He seemed to know Xie Ting. Moreover, from the sound of his voice, it seemed that he had a lot of water in his bottle. Jiang Xiao said, "There's not much left." Sang Bao said, "Give it to me." He pointed his gun at Jiang Xiao. His meaning was clear. If you don't give it to me, I'll shoot. Jiang Xiu smiled and opened the bottle. His meaning was clear. If you shoot, all the water will be poured out. Xie Ting didn't know if Jiang Xiu was really afraid of guns. He was so powerful that day, but it was possible that he was afraid of being robbed. Thus she said, Ming Fei, he's Mr. Jiang from Jiangnan. You better not have any ideas about him. Meng Fei's expression changed. Mr. Jiang? Which Mr. Jiang? Jiang Luoxia. Li Qingji's expression changed greatly. What, he's Jiang Luoxia? Chapter 161. Others might not know about Jiang Luoxia from Jiangnan, but how could Li Qingji not know about him? He controlled lightning, killed Lin Jinbei, suppressed the Wang family, and stepped on half of Jiangnan. His name was like thunder to the ears. Even though they were short on water and food, and their lives were uncertain, Li Qingji still stood up and walked over to Jiang Xiu. I didn't know that Mr. Jiang was here, so I apologize for my lack of respect. Whoa, all the students present were a little confused. What was going on? Li Qingji, who was famous in Pinghai, actually bowed to Jiang Xiu. Moreover, his tone and attitude were like a junior greeting an elder. Who is Jiang Xiu? Everyone looked at each other. They didn't know about Mr. Jiang from Jiangnan, but they were terrified to see someone as important as Li Qingji being so respectful to him. Qiu Yinru's eyes widened. She thought to herself, is he that powerful? Jiang Xiu said, forget it. These days, Li Qingji and his son had zero interaction with Jiang Xiu. Meng Fei also looked at Jiang Xiu in shock. He had heard of Jiang Luoxia's name in the desert, but not much. He only heard that this person was important in Jiangnan's underground. He didn't know much about him, but he was so young. You're hiding a real dragon. Jiang Xiu smiled faintly. Do you still want my water? Sang Bao's expression was ugly. He didn't know who Mr. Jiang was, but he didn't dare to act rashly when he saw that Li Qingji and his brother were so afraid of him. However, it wasn't his style to admit defeat. He secretly looked at Meng Fei. Meng Fei laughed and said, now that we're in the same boat, we should work together. How can we ask for Mr. Jiang's name? His words were tactful, but everyone knew that he didn't dare to provoke Jiang Xiu. This made Professor Su, Qian Deshen, and the students of Capital University extremely shocked. Jiang Xiu turned out to be such a person with such a background. Since the beginning of the school, they had been rejecting him. Thinking of this, they were a little annoyed in their hearts. They had joined forces to reject a freshman, but in the end, they had kicked a steel plate. However, it was useless to think about this now. Life and death were hard to predict. The three groups of people formed three small groups. Meng Fei's group, the exploration team's group, and Jiang Xiu and Xie Ting's group. They were going to survive this difficult night. Xie Ting asked, does Mr. Jiang have any plans after this? Jiang Xiu gave her some compressed biscuits and chocolates. Xie Ting took them, thanked him, and started eating. One could imagine the happiness of receiving food when one was extremely hungry. Jiang Xiu said, I don't have any plans. I'm not familiar with the desert, so I can only rely on you guys. Miss Xie, do you go to the desert often? Xie Ting's hand paused in the middle of eating. She nodded and continued eating. For the ancient desert city. Xie Ting nodded again. Gifts blind the eyes, eating the mouth softens the heart, let alone now in such a situation. Jiang Xiu said, does your family have anything to do with the ancient desert city? Could it be that you are the descendants of the people in the ancient desert city? Actually, I can see that you're not a purebred Han. Xie Ting raised her head and looked at Jiang Xiu, her eyes full of shock. From her expression, Jiang Xiu could be sure that his deduction was correct. However, he didn't continue to ask. There was no need to expose her background. Right now, the only way was to go to the ancient desert city. Once they arrived, everything would naturally be revealed. Rest early and recover your energy. We still have to hurry tomorrow. Jiang Xiu also gave his sleeping mat to Xie Ting. Although it was called a sleeping mat, it was actually a blanket used to cushion the sand on the ground. As for himself, he leaned against a rock to rest. Meng Fei's group was also quietly muttering. There were only 8 of them left, and they all had machine guns. Their opponents were Jiang Xiu, Xieting, Li Qingji, Li Beng, and especially the father and son of the Li family. They killed their son and brother, so of course they had to be careful. Sangbao said, "Big brother, we have guns in our hands. Why should we be afraid of that bullsh*t Mr. Jiang? What's so great about him?" Meng Fei frowned. This person can make a name for himself in Jiangnan. There are also rumors that he might be a demigod. It's not wise to go against him in public. Sangbao said, "Bullsh*t demigod. If he wasn't afraid of our machine guns, he wouldn't have let us kill so many of his people." Meng Fei nodded. That makes sense. In my opinion, in the second half of the night, we'll use our guns to kill them all and take their water and food. We'll leave Xieting and a few hostages behind. Tomorrow, we'll set off to find the ancient desert city. Meng Fei said, "If the enemy doesn't move, we won't move. Now that Xieting is willing to bring us to the ancient desert city, we've achieved our goal. Let's not complicate things. It won't be too late to make a move when we get there." "Listen to boss," Meng Fei nodded, indicating that his brothers should rest early. Then he looked towards the sand at Thousand Ghosts Cliff. At this moment, it was pitch black, like a monster crawling in the desert. Meng Fei thought of the experience in the cave. Those eerie white bones made his hair stand on end. He didn't dare to look again. Li Qingji and Li Beng couldn't help but look towards Meng Fei's group. The hatred of killing their son and brother was irreconcilable. They actually had a way to take revenge. There were machine guns left behind by Meng Fei's group in the cave. But the cave was so scary that Li Qingji and Li Beng didn't dare to enter. As mages, they had no idea what had happened in the cave. It was far beyond their abilities, so they didn't dare to enter. Not to mention them, even Jiang Xiu didn't have any abnormalities. His vision in the dark was much better than theirs. He didn't even see how people became a pile of white bones. So that night, Jiang Xiu was looking forward to something special happening. But unfortunately, other than the students shivering in the cold and tossing and turning, nothing special happened. Xiu Yinru and Yanni hugged each other and slept through the night. When the temperature was lowest in the middle of the night, Xiu Yinru's body began to heat up. She had a high fever. While she was in a daze, she felt that someone had fed her medicine and water. There was even a mouthful of sweet chocolate. She was very confused from the fever, but she vaguely knew who it was. Right now, other than Jiang Xiu, they all had no food or water. Unknowingly, tears flowed from her eyes. The next day, when the sun rose, the cold world gained some warmth. The people who were already frozen to death all got up. It wasn't just the students who couldn't stand it. Meng Fei, the father and son of the Li family, couldn't stand it either. They pulled themselves together and continued on their way. At 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning, the heat became unbearable again. The ground was smoking from the heat, and the air around them was distorted. It was difficult to walk forward. "Miss Xie, how far are we?" Xieting pressed her hands on her knees and pointed ahead. "After passing the sand dune in front, we'll arrive." When everyone heard this, they looked up and saw a layer of golden light in the distant horizon. It merged with the strong light of the sun, and they could vaguely make out the head of a giant statue. The head was as big as a small mountain, and half of it was hidden in the desert, showing off its ancient and mysterious nature. At this moment, everyone's heart skipped a beat. Had they really arrived? Is that one of the 3 monster trainers, the Sky Monster Trainer? Professor Su was supported by someone. According to the records, there were 3 monster trainers in the ancient desert city. From their appearance, they looked like sky monster trainers. "Professor, is the mysterious person a sky monster trainer?" "It's a god." Meng Fei was also stunned. From the light emitted by the statue, it was exactly the same as the information he had received. This statue was made of pure gold, which was equivalent to a mountain of gold. "We're here. We're really here." Jiang Xiu's gaze froze. The god's corpse was not a statue, but a corpse. It was not supposed to be gold. He had never heard of a gold Protoss being different from this person. Jiang Xiu concluded that this person's body had collapsed after being turned into gold. "Quick, let's go." Xieting had said that there was water in the ancient desert city. Now, regardless of whether it was a mountain of gold or silver, it was worth less than a mouthful of water. Beep beep beep. Suddenly there was a gunshot. Bullets swept across the desert, creating craters. Everyone stopped in their tracks in fright. Meng Fei raised his gun and said, "Miss Xie, you still haven't told me where the entrance to the ancient desert city is." Xie Ting said, "I don't know either." "Playing tricks with me?" Meng Fei raised his gun and was about to kill. Xie Ting shouted in fear, "Don't kill here, you'll be cursed." But the bullet had already been fired. Chapter 162. Everything was too late. The bullet had already been fired. His target was the Li father and son. Moreover, it was the son Li Beng who had fallen behind. The Li family had enmity with him, so of course he had to kill them first. The bullet pierced through the head and fresh blood sprayed out. The scarlet blood fell onto the yellow sand. Xie Ting's eyes widened in terror as if something terrifying had happened. Of course, it wasn't because she had killed someone. There had been more than 1 or 2 people killed by this wave of bandits in the desert. But her terrified appearance made it seem like she was about to collapse. "Curse!" Meng Fei sneered and said, "Do you think I will believe such a childish lie? You just want to stop me from killing them. Not only them, if you don't speak, I will kill you as well." Xie Ting shook her head. Her eyes were filled with terror as she said, "I didn't lie to you. Now, you don't even need to kill us. All of us will die here. You've harmed everyone, including yourself." Meng Fei didn't believe it at first, but seeing Xie Ting's expression, he couldn't help but be shaken. Xie Ting's terror was not on the surface, but from the depths of her soul. "Don't try to scare me with words," Xie Ting said. "I didn't lie to you. You should have heard of what happened here 400 years ago. After that night, this place was cursed." Meng Fei's face gradually turned pale. He had a certain understanding of the ancient desert city. Of course, he had a plan to ambush the Xie family for so long before succeeding. Moreover, he had heard people say that this place was extremely strange. "What will happen?" Xie Ting said, "The cursed person's physical body will burn to ashes." Meng Fei's face twitched. "Is there a way to break the curse?" Xie Ting said, "There is, but I don't know what it means. The wrath of the yin-yang fire god will cause one to crawl to the other side of hell. In another world, one will fall forever." Meng Fei shook his head. He did not believe it. However, in the next second, everyone was dumbfounded. They were extremely frightened. Li Qingji's entire body was trembling. Li Beng, who had been killed, suddenly burst into flames. It was like a person was burning. This flame was completely different from the flames that everyone had seen. In just a few breaths, his entire body was burned until only a humanoid shadow was left. Ah! Meng Fei felt as if he was in an ice cellar. How could this be? He felt his eyes turn red, and his eyeballs almost fell out of their sockets. "Speak. You must know a way to break the curse. You must. Otherwise, I'll kill you," Xie Ting said sadly. "It's useless to kill me. I don't know either. Besides, I'm about to die. No one can survive." "Look at your left arm." Meng Fei took a look. There was a flame-like pattern on his arm that was spreading up his arm. He was stunned. Xie Ting's voice rang in his ears. "When your spell reaches your heart, you'll burn like the people you've killed." The others also raised their arms, and on each of their wrists, there was an image of a flame that spread to their arms. How could this be? "I don't want to die." Meng Fei raised the machine gun and pointed it at Xie Ting. "You must have a way. You must. Speak. If you don't, I'll kill you." Xie Ting shook her head sadly. She didn't want to die either. She was only 16 or 17 years old. Her life had just begun, and she was still so beautiful. "I don't believe it, I don't believe it." But at this time a voice said, "It's useless to kill him." Everyone turned to see Jiang Xiao. He said, "The wrath of the yin-yang fire god requires you to crawl to the other side of hell. In another world, you'll fall forever. It requires you to go to another world. As long as you stay in this world, you'll be burned." Meng Fei said, "Go to another world? How?" This sounded like a fairy tale. Jiang Xiao said, "Simple. If you die, you can go to another world." Wasn't that obvious? However, what Jiang Xiao said was something they could understand. Meng Fei thought that Jiang Xiu was mocking him, and he was furious. What are you so proud of? Aren't you the same as me? If we die, you'll die too. Jiang Xiu looked at his left hand. There was a similar flame on his left wrist. I still have to die. Professor Su, Qiu Yinru, and the others looked at the spell diagram on their arms. Their eyes were filled with despair. Suddenly, there was a commotion behind them. Everyone turned around and saw a group of people rushing towards them. Xieting immediately shouted, "Don't come over." Qiu Yinru and the others also shouted. However, that group of people was surprisingly energetic. They rode on the camel mountain at a fast speed. Perhaps they saw them. Not only did they not stop, they even sped up. Not long after, they arrived in front of them. It was none other than the Jin family. Leading them was the eldest brother of the Jin family. Mu Senator beside him was the elder of the Jin family, the smoking old man. Their faces were a little dusty, but they didn't look embarrassed at all. Don't come over. Xieting shook her head. It was too late. They had already stepped into the blood-stained land, and were cursed. The elder of the Jin family saw Professor Su, Qian Deshen, Qiu Yinru and the others. They looked like professors and students. He was 70 to 80% sure that these people were the expedition team from Imperial Capital University. Excuse me, are you Professor Su's classmates from Imperial Capital University? Professor Su nodded in surprise. We are. The elder of the Jin family said. We are the Pinghai Jin family. We are Jin Shi's elders. If it wasn't for the curse, they would definitely cheer. They were saved, they were saved. But now, they felt even more miserable and ironic. Professor Su said, I don't see young Master Jin. We didn't abandon young Master Jin and enter the desert alone. We just couldn't contact him. The elder of the Jin family said, I know. This has nothing to do with Professor Su. Jin Shi's legs were broken, and he had surgery on the spot. That's why he couldn't come. The culprit is among you. You are Mr. Jiang? He looked at Jiang Xiu. Everyone here was exhausted. Only Jiang Xiu stood there calmly. Only a demigod could maintain such a demeanor after so long in the desert. Jiang Xiu said, That's right. I broke Jin Shi's legs. The students present couldn't help but exclaim. No wonder young Master Jin suddenly disappeared. Since you know who I am, how dare you chase me into the desert? The elder of the Jin family's face darkened. Humph, anyone who offends the Pinghai Jin family has to pay the price. You Jiang Luoxia can show off in Jiangnan. But if you dare to touch the Jin family, you won't be able to leave the desert today. Jiang Xiu said. Do you have the ability to do that? The elder of the Jin family said. Even if you are a demigod, so what? Don't we have demigods in the Jin family? Jiang Xiu said. It's you. Mu Sun had been staring at Jiang Xiu ever since he arrived. Demigods had a special connection with demigods. It was as if he had seen his own kind. He said, It's really surprising that you're still so young. Unfortunately, your cultivation path has come to an end. His hair started to move even though there was no wind, and the air around him changed. Xie Ting said, Does the Jin family still want to fight Mr. Jiang? I advise you to save it. Now we're all going to die. Everyone, look at your left arms. You've all been cursed. Anyone who steps foot in here will die. Hearing this, the Jin family looked at their arms. Even Mu Sen's expression changed. How can this be? This is the ancient desert city. Because of the massacre 400 years ago, this place has been cursed. If anyone kills here, everyone here will be cursed. What happens if you're cursed? When the flame reaches your heart, you'll be burned to death. The elder of the Jin family said, Bullshit. So what if I killed someone? Everyone look. They saw a golden light shoot up into the sky. The entire ground shook as if there was an earthquake. Then they saw the desert rise up like waves. It was as if something was emerging from the ground. They could vaguely see a dark shadow. In the next moment, everyone was dumbfounded. A golden giant hundreds of meters tall stood in the distance. Chapter 163. The 100-meter tall golden giant standing in the middle of the desert really made people daydream. Professor Su and Qian Deshen found it hard to imagine how he had appeared here. It was simply unimaginable to build such a huge statue. Modern people could barely do it after spending a lot of money and material resources. But how did people from hundreds of years ago do it? They couldn't help but imagine the golden giant being tied up by countless chains, with countless carts and thousands of laborers pulling it. Wonder, it's really a wonder. When Professor Su saw this scene, his whole body was filled with excitement. He felt that being able to see such a spectacle before his death could be considered as a consolation before his death. It's really shocking. Qian Deshen was also shocked. It was a pity that he had lost all his cameras along the way. Otherwise, if he had taken a photo, it would definitely cause a sensation and attract countless archaeologists. This place would also become a hot spot for archaeologists to see the mystery of the golden giant. It's gold, right? The thickness of the statue was definitely made of pure gold. They would be rich if they dug out a few pieces. In the desert, it was said that there were many similar treasures, which was also the reason why there were so many desert adventurers. However, most of the time, they found them but couldn't take them away. When they found them, they were already exhausted. In addition, these precious things were too heavy, so they could only look at them and sigh. Yellow sand poured down from the golden statue. Under the sunlight and the golden light, it seemed to turn into golden sand. The light was very dazzling. No. The next moment, everyone was dumbfounded once again. They were shocked to the extreme. The golden giant statue, which was hundreds of meters tall, slowly lowered its head. Wow, this was really something. Everyone present was almost scared out of their wits. It's alive? At this moment, everyone's first reaction was to run, but their legs seemed to be locked to the ground. They couldn't move at all. They were so shocked that they couldn't move. They could only instinctively look up at the golden giant. He's coming. The golden giant took a step forward and walked like a normal person. Boom. The entire sand wave rolled over with one step. When it was raised, it was as high as a 10-story building. When it landed, it covered the sky and covered the earth. What should we do? The distance of a few hundred meters was a matter of 2 steps for the golden giant. In an instant, it was in front of everyone. Run. If he were to be stepped on, he would be turned into a pile of mud. Only now did they think of escaping, but it was already too late. The golden giant was already closing in. He was like a god from the legends, his entire body glowing with golden light. His face was like a statue, and his eyes were like those of a bodhisattva. He looked like an inanimate object, but he was actually alive. Ah! The crowd screamed. In the face of life and death, they used the last of their strength to escape. Boom! With a stomp, those who were too slow were directly trampled under the foot. As for those who had escaped the range of the stomp, they were sent flying into the air by the yellow sand. It felt as if they had been hit by a wave on the surface of the sea. They were pushed to the top of the wave, and then fell back down heavily. Shoot him! Someone shouted, and Meng Fei and the others remembered that they still had machine guns. Beep, beep, beep. They immediately raised their machine guns and fired at the golden giant. The bullets had terrifying penetrative power and speed. In everyone's mind, there were 2 possibilities. One was that the bullets had pierced through the golden giant, and the other was that they had not. After all, the golden giant looked like it was made of gold, and it was very difficult to break through its defense. However, the result was beyond everyone's expectations. When the bullets were about to hit the golden giant, they fell through the air. Under the golden giant's skin, the space seemed to be distorted, and there was a layer of light film. The bullets could not even reach the golden giant. Ah! Seeing this scene, everyone felt a sense of helplessness from the bottom of their hearts. What kind of existence was this? It could actually emit such incredible power. Beep, beep, beep. Meng Fei and the others were furious. They did not believe it. The bullets fell through the air, but no matter how they roared, howled, or pulled the trigger, the bullets could not get close to the golden giant. Shock, despair. Suddenly, the crowd cried out in alarm. Meng Fei and the others screamed as they saw the golden giant kick them. The area it covered was too large, and there was no way to dodge it. They were sent flying like soccer balls. They fell dozens of meters away and landed heavily on the sand. No one knew if they were dead or alive. Brother Musun, what should we do? Do it. The one called Musun stepped on the camel and soared into the air like a rock spreading its wings. He rose 4 to 5 meters high and hung in the air. His hands twisted, as if he was activating some kind of power. However, he saw the wild sand behind him sweeping up like a dragon and wind under the guidance of his power. As his palms slowly pushed out, the wind and sand behind him suddenly rushed forward, bringing with it a whistling sound that filled the sky. Roar! Professor Su and the others were shocked. Was this still a human? He was like a top warrior in a novel. He could actually control the sand to rush out. The power was so strong that it was like an angry dragon coming out of the sea. This is the heaven and earth reversal teleportation technique from the Taiping Tao scripture. Brother Musun actually mastered it. The disciples of the Jin family were also shocked. This move is like an immortal technique. The sand rushed out dozens of meters. They were very excited. This was a demigod of the Jin family. No matter what the opponent was, a demigod was here. Why couldn't they fight? You're defeated. Musun roared. The power of his palms burst out completely. Roar. The wind howled even more violently. Boom. The golden giant threw a punch at the surging sand. The air waves brought about by the violent fist force surged, and the solidified sand sprayed out like a fountain. Then, as if it had lost its power, it drifted away with the wind. What? Musun was shocked, but he didn't have time to react. The fist came through the air, and his whole body flew back like a kite with a broken string. He spat out a mouthful of blood in the air, and fell to the ground with a bang. The sand on the ground that had been swept up by the wind also lost its power and fell back down. Brother Musun. Several members of the Jin family rushed over, leaving after images. They pulled Musun up and flew back. He's too strong. Musun spat out blood and said with difficulty, "This person may be a god." When he said this, he felt a kind of panic in his heart. God was in existence above mortals. How could they resist? It was also what he wanted to pursue in his life. Fight it out with him. The smoking old man was hot-tempered and stubborn. Seeing this situation, he was ruthless and wanted to fight. No. Musun grabbed the smoking old man in horror. A god can't be resisted. We can only kowtow and submit. Just now, everyone saw the power of the golden giant. It was really hard to imagine what kind of scene it would be if he appeared in a modern city. Tall buildings were only as high as his calves. He could step on them by raising his foot. Cars were like paper under his feet. It would take less than a day to destroy a city. Escape, we can't escape. Fight, we can't beat him. What can we do? Musun said nervously, "Quick, kneel down." He endured the pain and was the first to kneel on the ground. He was very sincere. Everyone realized the meaning of Musun's words. If it was really a god, of course they would kowtow. Yes, everyone kneeled down. Everyone echoed. It felt like they had found a way to save themselves. One by one, they hurriedly knelt down, just like the believers of this god. This seemed to be their last hope. They seemed to have made the right bet. The huge golden statue didn't attack them anymore. It stopped there and looked down at them. This made them more certain that the person in front of them was a god. They had to be pious. Only by being pious could they save their lives. But they found that the golden giant turned his head to look at a person on the side. They also looked and saw another person standing there. This person was none other than Jiang Xiao. Musun and the others were all shocked. Li Qingji and the others were even more frightened because they were not far from Jiang Xiao. "Mr. Jiang, kneel down. Hurry up. That you're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.